Okay, so um, culture thug. We've been really excited to have you on because I think we kind of touched base on this last night, but I think that most people don't really understand what fascism is, right? So fascism t- becomes like a catch-all word for anything that's semi-authoritarian or mean or seems militaristic. It just becomes, oh well, that's fascism. Antifa's fascist. The libertarians are fascist. The alt-right is fascist. The neocons are fascist. And I think given like what's on your YouTube channel, that all of you should check out and subscribe to. I think you're a very good source of information for what fascist ideology and philosophy actually is. So please introduce yourself. Tell us, show whatever you want to show, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, and first, I couldn't agree more. I mean, fascism has been so misrepresented, even not only by like the media and public school, but by people that call themselves fascists, which makes it even more frustrating. So I think that was one of the themes and reasons I created my channel, the Culture Thug channel, was to advocate and try to inform on what fascist philosophy is, because fascism really stems from what they call third position philosophy, and it's a political structure that is birthed from a philosophy. But never or hardly ever is the philosophy of fascism ever spoken about. It's always these certain aspects that people will cherry pick of fascism of the past, and this is how they'll try to define it, or they'll misguide people and turn it into something that it never really was. So my channel is dedicated to, mainly for a large part, rebirthing names of fascist intellectuals and fascist philosophers of the past, and rebirthing ideologies that were prominent in the early 1900s and late 1800s as kind of a response to socialism and a response to capitalism.
Okay, so before we get into like the actual AMA questions, because there are a lot of them, can you just kind of give us like a quick rundown of what fascism is? Like what, just like a brief overview of fascist philosophy from your perspective.
Okay, the universal tenet of fascism, where fascism, if you look at fascism, it is propped up all over the world, from Europe to South America to North America, and wherever it's popped up, it's always been a little different because it's an organic philosophy. It's built around the nation, the culture of a people, so it's always organic in that sense. But the universal themes where all fascism starts is from the same principle that man united, man aimed towards a specific goal, a reason for life, can achieve the unimaginable. And this is where fascism starts. It believes in giving a cause and reason to life, and then promoting betterment of man to be able to achieve these high visions that so many fascist philosophers' minds are filled with.
Okay, so like, do you think that we this is another thing we kind of talked about like on our preliminary discussion last night. Uh, we kind of touched on Nazi Germany, right, and Hitler, and Hitlerism as he called it. So what's the difference between that, what happened in Nazi Germany, and fascism, or was that just like the German version of fascism that evolved for that organically?
That was the German version of fascism. You'll see in Romania, you had the Iron Guard, and they were heavily religious. Their religion was a large part of their belief. Then you'll see in Spain, you also had that. You had a lot of religion there. In Germany, it was built around the biological race. In Italy, it was built around the nation. In Brazil, it was also built around the nation with some religious tendencies to there. So yeah, that was just the Germans' organic form of fascism. To them, they were German, ethnic Germans were like over 95, 96% of the population. So to them, it made sense to have fascism, the unity they seeked to create, to be built around a biological race, the ethnicity of Germans. So yeah, that was their expression of fascism.
Okay, so I think we're going to get to the questions 'cause like I said, there are a lot of them, and they're still coming in. I'm going to start us off with something pretty light. Um, how did you become a fascist? And this was asked by Edwardson, who apparently wants to speak to you in voice chat. Edwardson, are you in here? Let me see. I don't see you in here. Okay, well, how did you become a fascist?
I it was I was 20 or 21, I forget, and I read Mein Kampf for the first time. I had I had just gotten into, like, I was curious about serial killers. Ted Bundy always was an enigma to me. It's like, how could this successful man um just snap and be like this sick raping murderer just out of nowhere? Like, how does a mind do this? Like, I always found this morbid curiosity into that. So I started digging into people like that, and trying to figure out like how a person can snap. So I thought, it's like, who's the most evil person out there? It's like, oh, Hitler, of course. And he wrote this book, so I get to read this great evil satanic manifesto of the world's most evilest man. So I picked up Mein Kampf and I started reading it, and a lot of things hit me from it, and I was completely shocked. And one of the main things that came through is how much I'd lied to by my television, by my teachers, even by my parents. And I was shocked that I was so ignorant to what he really was. And something that very much came through in the book was his passion for the German people. And I had realized up until that point in my life, I was a very selfish person. I didn't care about my nation. I didn't care about, my fellow citizen. I cared about myself. It was about self-gratification. And that's kind of how I lived my life, almost anarchistic. And so that started the process of me actually caring about my nation. And then from there, just continuing more and more. Of course, I was young and dumb. So I was like, oh, I'm a National Socialist now, not seeing the huge contradiction in that, especially as an American saying that. But that started the path, which eventually led me to realizing, oh, this is the philosophy I believe in, this third position philosophy. So it started with that book, and that just got me going to looking deeper and deeper into the question.
Okay, so actually, this is kind of this kind of bleeds into a question that was asked by God, who is in here. So you said that your third position, right? But in the United States, there are two traditional traditions. You have the Democrat Party, the Republican Party. God asks, do you vote Democrat or Republican?
I've only voted once in my life, and I turn 40 next month. I've only voted once in my life, and that was for this last Trump campaign. And that was because, not who Trump was, but the reaction he got and some of the dog whistles that came from him were very nationalistic, very populistic, and fascistic. And I saw the reaction, and it completely changed my whole view of the future, the possible future of America, because up until that point, I was pretty much, I guess, what you would call black-pilled. I had said America is just going down. No one's going to do anything about it. We've lost it to the globalists. We've lost it to, we're going to become a cosmopolitan consuming society that has no roots in anything outside of what we purchase. And after I saw like there was actually this nationalistic response to Trump, and then that even the Republicans sooner or later had to get on board, reluctantly so, but they had to, I saw, wow, the people are open to a third position approach. So that was the only time I voted. I won't vote for him again this next time coming around, but I think that was the best vote I could have did. I got active in the local campaign. I went to a lot of his rallies. I did a lot of door-to-door stuff for him and all this stuff, and got involved with the local Republican Party. So all of this helped me to kind of get an understanding of how local politics works. But so long story short, that was my first and only vote until someone 10 times better than Trump comes around.
Okay, so Strass is in here, I hope, and he'd actually like to ask you a question. He's apparently a longtime viewer of your channel. So I'm going to go ahead and unmute Strass now.
Can you hear me?
Go on.
Yep.
Okay, so my question for you is, so from watching your Q&A things on your CT Rants channel, you seem to advocate more for using the Republican Party or running independent over, founding a new fascistic-minded political party in America. Correct me if I'm wrong, but why do you see that as the better approach?
Because the apparatus of the Republican Party or even independent is already there for the ballot. First, to become a new party, you have to get however many, like in Nevada, we tried to create a party in 2006, 2007, somewhere around there, and we needed to get 40,000 signatures to get on the ballot. That was just not happening, especially with our radical approach we were coming with. So I think since the apparatus is already there, and it's old and dying and decrepit, and it's lusting for young blood, I think we can get in there. And I think if you have intelligent people that can put forth third position philosophy to these people, you can win some support and take advantage of that apparatus, because as we know, conservatives don't conserve anything. And I think even the most basic Republican is starting to see this, just how impotent they are. So I think the apparatus is there. I think we don't have billionaires behind it. If we had a Soros funding fascism, maybe I'd say, hey, we can try to create a true third position party and go forward from there. But we don't have that. And we've seen too many failures. I've even created my own fascist party, LARPing online and all of this. And we see it just does not gain any ground. Even something like the Green Party, which has millions and millions and millions of dollars behind it, which we can only wish for, can't crack the surface of this two-party political system. So I think as the Republicans decay, fresh blood, true ideology can come in there and take it over. And even like with the Trump thing, reluctantly force their support, because there's no other option. It's either us or, you know, accepting the progressive liberals.
Yeah, there's similar laws with like petitions in my state too. I have one more question to tap on. It's really short. You've mentioned like a summit in the future for fascists. Could you just elaborate on that, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, that's my idealistic hope. I went through this on one of my rants where like my two idealistic hopes for the near future is serious third position people get together and we have a summit somewhere and we hammer out and figure out who we are, what our message is, and we run on that in our separate states. And that would be great. I haven't gained no ground as far as that goes, as far as meeting people that are serious about that. That's the unfortunate truth about it. Then my other hope would be an avatar comes around to where we can support and follow this person. But that's most likely not going to happen, even less so than the summit. So unfortunately, like I'm like, well, I'm going to have to start running for local positions. And I'm hoping, even if we don't have the summit, other third position minded people will do that in their states as well. And we can start trying to get some kind of movement like that, some kind of traction like that. But yeah, I hope we can still have this summit. I haven't met serious people that want to do that, that are well educated on third position philosophy and that are serious about saying, yeah, I'm building myself as well. I'm honing my skills, and we need to get together and have this summit. I've met a handful of people that want to do this, but outside of that, but we have years. It's just slowly building. I think a lot of people are getting into politics and realizing what fascism is. So I think the future is very bright. So hopefully we do have that moment where 30 or 40 of us serious people can meet somewhere in this country and have true discussion and debate about how can we turn our visions into reality.
Okay, well, I think kind of going off that, I think it's a pretty good idea now to get into what that vision actually is, right? I don't think we've kind of touched on that just yet. So there's a question from Kia, or Kia. It's one of our moderators here. Because I think, as we touched on earlier with Nazi Germany, when people think fascism, they think Hitler. So how does your version of fascism differentiate itself from Nazi Germany style fascism?
Oh, wow. I mean, there's just, it's a whole different world. We're talking 1930s Germany there. I mean, I don't think, there's a lot of things I believe like Pandora's box has been opened. And there's a lot of things I would like to sweep away that I don't think is possible to sweep away. So I believe one thing Americans need to do that is detrimental for us is, especially those of us who are politically aware and don't want this future many of us are seeing to happen, is like if we have 20 beliefs, personal beliefs, all of us do, we each need to remove like 5 of these to have common ground. Like we agree on 15 things, we disagree on these 5 things, so these things need to disappear. When you're talking National Socialist Germany and to what America is, I can't even tell you what's different, because there's very little, and outside of the core, like I said, the universal belief of fascism, united people towards common goals and building themselves up, making environment conducive to building them up physically, mentally, and spiritually. Outside of that core premise, everything's different, because that was something that was solely Germanic. And what American fascism, whatever it's going to be called, it's not even going to be called American fascism. Like I said, we'll run under Republicans as simply as a political philosophy. But whatever that is, it's going to have to be organic to Americans. So of course you're going to have still representation through states and etc. You will have, I believe, still a parliament. I don't think it'll be in the same sense of the democratic parliament, but still that kind of representation. So it's hard for me to answer what's different, because there's very little in common, I would imagine, as far as laws and practices go.
Well, can you kind of dig into that a little bit? Like, what do you mean by, you say it's different, but different in what ways? Like, can you give us an example of something?
Well, we couldn't have the, in America, you couldn't have the biological race exclusion thing. We couldn't get away with euthanasia programs, especially euthanasia with non-consent, which took place. So these would be two big things. We couldn't have a cult of personality dictating everything. We would have, the fascistic philosophy would have to stay true to that philosophy. It couldn't be a cult of personality that can change the law on a whim. Like, there has to be something respected there. So these are like huge differences you couldn't get away with. Like I said, especially when you're dealing with a country that is racially diverse, culturally diverse, as opposed to what Germany had. In my opinion, it made sense for them to have this biological race in their fascistic beliefs, because that's what largely their country was made up of, and they viewed the people as outsiders, as kind of infecting and attacking their culture and way of life. So they took that position. That's not a position we can take in America with any expectation of realistic progress going down that way.
Okay, so that, again, we've got a question kind of relating to that. Comes from Suicide, who's the user here. Can fascism lead to racism? And why is that, if it does?
Well, just simple human interactions can lead to racism. I mean, everything to kind of lead to racism. I don't think in America, I think it's more of a chance not to lead to racism because it's race real. It's not, I think a lot of our racism comes now because we're not real on the topic of a race. It's a one-sided discussion. And I think this builds animosity between people. And it's kind of a swerved one-way discussion. So I think race realism, I think people speaking like adults on these controversial topics will go a long way. I think we don't give ourselves enough credit. We think we're all SJWs and we're all triggered and offended. But I really do believe if we have adult conversations on these real topics, we can accept we're different, and we can still understand we can be different and live different and work together and have common goals underneath the banner of America.
Okay, so we've got another question here from Zach, who wants to ask it himself. So I'm going to unmute him now. Go on, Zach.
All right. Culture Thug, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, Zach.
All right. So I've been following you for over a year, and I understand I've been watching your rants and such of you saying how we can achieve American fascism through the system. Do you think that if it does come through the current system that we have now, do you think that it would maybe end up becoming like some neoliberal hellhole like Pinochet? Because me personally, I think the system's too corrupt, and the only way we can actually achieve true fascism through the system is with the collapse of the system. It has to rise to the ashes. That's my personal opinion, but I was wondering if you think that.
Yeah. Well, I kind of agree with you, but I still agree with myself in saying, yeah, the system's going to have to be not fall apart. We're going to have to drag all of the people out of Congress. I believe a populist party. This is why I believe populism is the way to go, because if you have a populist movement, the military, the police, they won't shut it down. They won't do that because too many of their family members, too many of them will agree with it and believe in it. We can't have nothing better than the Trump thing can show us. Not one man can do anything in this world. That's why I laughed at the Ron Paul supporters back in 2008 and 9. They're like, oh, Ron Paul. It's like, even if he won, he couldn't do anything he wanted to because of how the system is set up. Because of that reason, yes, we need a complete overhaul of the system. Just a fascist, like if I ran for president and I won presidency and nothing else changed, I would be a lame duck. It wouldn't matter. Anything I wanted to do wouldn't come through. So yes, we need a complete overhaul of the system. Instead of waiting for it to collapse, I'd much rather win the day and replace all the corrupt people in there with people that actually give a damn about the future of this country.
Okay. So Cohort asked a question kind of tied into that. Um, do you believe fascism has a chance of catching on in the near future in the United States? Or are we merely holding the torch for the next generation?
No, I think it's completely possible in our lifetime, in our generation, within the next 20 years. I think if we as third position believers, or actually as anyone in any other alternative political scene, can't do something about it, it's only our shortcoming, because I think the climate is ripe for change. I think this Trump thing really, because it wasn't only Trump, it was Bernie Sanders as well. We saw a large amount of Americans go outside the political norms of Republican and Democrat. And I think there's a large crowd, both on the right and left, to be seized under populism. So yes, I think it's very, very, very doable. In fact, I'm optimistic about it. I think it's going to happen. It's going to keep going that way.
Okay. So we've got another question here about education from Bubbles, who's one of the moderators here. She asked, how important is education under fascism? And I'm going to kind of add to that just a little bit, kind of tie this into one of her other questions, which is basically about the role of women in a fascist society. What do you think about those two things? Can you kind of expand on fascist philosophy regarding that?
Well, of course, education is very important, and that's why typically fascists believe in nationalized education. We believe the people with the best merit should be able to get into the Ivy League colleges and have the same opportunity as people born with wealth. In fact, we believe in complete meritocracy. So if the people born into wealth can't pass the test to get into the, and they're not going to get into these schools. So yeah, education is very important, and this is why it's made available to everyone, and higher levels of education or trade schools are dealt out through merit. And as far as women, no, there's always the I guess a stereotype where the fascist wants to just put the woman barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen. And there is some truth to that, in the sense that fascism does preach natural roles for people. They do see the nurturing side of women and see that as beneficial to women raising children. But at the same time, and whether it's fascist Italy or Nazi Germany, you can look into it and see women of merit were always awarded the positions through merit. And I believe that as well. If a woman has the skills at a trade or a job or whatever, then they should pursue that. So it's encouragement to have the nuclear family, but it's not restriction on anyone. And I think what we get from that, instead of having like you have now, most women entering, the job force and just doing remedial jobs and whatnot, and two-parent working families. Instead, you'll have a lot more nuclear family, and the women involved in fields that you dominantly don't see women in, the women that are actually in there, will be of merit and more worthy of working those positions than just some like affirmative action or some guilt hire or someone that did some favors to get a position.
Okay. So I think this kind of ties into the it seems to be one of the core beliefs of fascism that you need to preserve and protect your culture, right? Subs actually asked a pretty good question regarding that. It talks about, how would you define culture, and why is it important to preserve? And how has modern liberal capitalism failed in that regard?
Culture is, well, it's manifested in both metaphysical and physical, but it stems from the esoteric expressions of a people that have lived in the same soil, the same ethnicity. We're talking traditionally as what we come into in the modern age. So this is their expression, their laws, their food, their dress, their music, their ethics. Everything comes through this shared unity, this shared experience that they've had for so long. So what you do when you get rid of culture is you cut the people from their root. And now there's no form of understood tradition or ethics or any kind of codes they live by outside of what's material now. What does liberal capitalism do? It materializes everything. Everything has now come down to just simply profit. It's, if you can make profit, you are in this society, you are good. And this is what equates to what is good, what is bad. If you're poor, guess what? You're bad. You can't buy freedom. You can't go on the vacation. You can't do this. You can't do all the things a person with money can do. Eat the finer foods, et cetera, et cetera. So it completely, liberal capitalism completely takes the spiritual away from people and materializes all existence. Culture is an expression of the metaphysical. It is the expression of the spirit and cultivated and manifested into reality. So I think history has shown us this. When people loses their culture, they lose their society, whether it be Greece, whether it be Rome, whether it be Egypt, whether it be the Assyrians, the Persians, etc. These people are vanquished because they have lost their culture. Even though remnants of their DNA was around, who they were are completely gone, because, and this is exactly what's going to happen to America. As America completely gets, demographics continue to change, you import everyone from everywhere, it gets less and less about what it is to be American and more about what can America do for me. People come here just to get benefits from the system. There's nothing about preserving, enhancing, and adding to the culture and traditions of this country. So I think it's vital. I think it's vital for a people and a civilization. We've seen every time they've lost their culture, they've disappeared, because that is their expression. That is the esoteric expression of a people. And where it comes from, we don't know. We can, theorize about it, whether how much of nature and nurture play a role in it, but we know it exists, and we see it different and in different peoples, and these organic expressions from people. So it's something very real. It's something very powerful, and it's something, once we get cut away from, we wither away and die. It's like it's flower. You can cut a flower from its root, put it in a vase. It'll stay alive for 7-8 days or whatever in the vase, but it's going to eventually die. And that's the same with culture. Once we're cut from the root, we slowly start withering away.
Okay. So I think a major portion of culture is religion, right? For many people. And Kakashi, one of our users here, asked a question. What is your attitude towards religion?
Personally, I'm agnostic. I just simply believe I don't know. I guess pressed more, I'd say I'm sort of a deist. I have a belief in whether it's the universe, a creating force, a conscious force. I don't know. I just know that there is a belief in something deeper. I just can't put a name on it. And I'd like to keep politics and religion separate when it comes to power. I don't think, like I said, in Romania, they had the Iron Guard, which was heavily religious, and Codreanu is someone who's super Christian, who I hold very dear to my heart. But I wouldn't want to live in a society like that, where all decisions are made through the interpretation of religion, even though that has, through a lot of history, pagan and Christianity, that's how societies were run. I don't think that is most palatable in this age, as far my personal opinion, at least.
Okay. So speaking of palatable things and protecting your culture, Dandita asked a question. Is accepting transsexualism a form of the degeneration of society from the fascist view?
Well, accepting, I mean, things like this have always been around. They just not really been that big of an issue. I think these topics, transsexuals and homosexuality, it's been weaponized to divide people. I think it really didn't matter before. Culture stayed the same, and transsexuals existed, homosexuals existed, but there wasn't this promotion of these degenerate cultures just to kind of push the divide between people. So I do think that promoting these degenerate cultures and calling them, oh, this is what homosexuals are, this is what transsexuals are, yes, that is degeneracy. That is a form of how degenerate we're becoming. But I don't think simply and not throwing them all off of roofs and shit shows that we're degenerate. No, I think we've lived thousands and thousands of years with people just like that, and some of them have contributed great things in arts and entertainment. So it's there's even been worth to it. But I think these things have been weaponized to continue to divide us and have us fighting over these hot button issues. So I don't think we're degenerate for accepting it. I think it's a sign of degeneracy that we're promoting these things that are heavily degenerate and calling it like a part of our culture that we need to accept. So I hope that I kind of answered yes and no, but I think there is a fine line there.
Yeah, but I think just kind of nail this down. So are you saying that you would allow them to transition if you had like an American fascist society? You'd allow them to transition to have their parades and their their gay pride, or would that be something that you feel would need to be stomped out and put down to protect the culture?
It stomped down, put down. Like it never happened. It never happened before until the last, whatever, 20, 30 years. Right. So yeah, no, this, like I said, this is how, there's nothing, when you see these gay pride marches, there's nothing that's enhancing towards gays there. It's a bunch of degenerates. It's a bunch of effeminate people dancing around, living up to stereotypes. So yeah, of course you wouldn't want that. And underneath the fascist society anyways, that's pushing division right there. It's be happy to be American. We don't care if you're gay, if you're black, if you're white, if you're yellow, whatever. It's like promote Americanism, promote Americana, not all this other I'm a this, and you need to appreciate that. No, that's like I said. I think they've been used as useful idiots for the most part to play a part in dividing people. So yeah, no, you wouldn't have any of these. It would be how it was, kind of keep it in the closet mentality, and not. Gay parades all over the place, or shaming people for being offended of watching two dudes or two girls make out.
Okay, so so this kind of leads into another question that Dandita, one of our users, asked, and that is, are you okay with abolishing freedom of expression as described in the liberal philosophy? And given that you were talking about, culture being the expression of these people, the people that live on this land. I mean, wouldn't that also be a form of their expression? They chose to express themselves in this way sexually or in their dress, or they chose to go out dressed like a woman. Like so you'd be okay with just stomping that out entirely if it goes against the norm?
Yeah, because it has to be about the greater good. If you're living a society that's built around collectivist beliefs, you can't. The individual is not the center of the universe, and someone who's willing to do that is saying, "I'm at the center of the universe. That what I believe matters more than what the culture and society I live in supports." So yeah, it's easily, if you're not going to be a part of the greater good, if you're going to seek to try to divide people for whatever selfish aims, then yeah, there's not even a second thought on that. In fact, I view that as like selfishness expressed from them, which is extreme selfishness expressed from them, which is something that couldn't work in a society that says, hey, we're on a team, we're working together for a greater goal that benefits us all. He's not a good player on a team like that. So I think it'd be easy to squash something like that.
Okay. So all this talk of like collectivism, I'm sure many of these American libertarians are kind of ringing silently in voice chat right now, but it sounds a lot like communist speak, like socialist speak. So Kakashi asked a question: is fascism ideologically descended from communism?
A huge family that's.
Do you think there's any crossover there?
Well, there's crossover to fascism and communism and capitalism. There's a little bit of this and a little bit of that, hence the third position. It's like we were talking last night. It's kind of a centrist belief. It takes what works from the right, it takes what works from the left, and discard what doesn't work from the right and what doesn't work from the left, and applies like a new spirit behind it. So yeah, there will be some crossovers here, but no, I honestly think there's more in common with capitalism. Philosophically, there's more in common with capitalism and communism than there is with fascism with either, even though you can find aspects of capitalism and fascism and aspects of communism and fascism. Fundamentally, capitalism and communism are very materialistic, and they reduce man to materialism, and they view men as simply materialistic with no greater goals outside of capitalism, consuming profit, consuming capital or accumulating capital, and same with socialism, where it's all about some vague equality and fairness that is just not true in nature. So it just materializes the people. So I don't see, like I said, I see more in common with capitalism and communism than either of those with fascism. When we come to the fundamental root of the philosophy of the ideology, is anti-materialistic, while communism is very materialistic, as is capitalism. So I don't see much crossover. You may find, oh, the communists gave nationalized education, so do the fascists, so now they're the same. So no, it's completely different. It's different reasons why these things happen and to different outcomes. So even when you find overlap with capitalism and communism with fascism, at the root, at its core, the philosophy behind it it stands upon itself. It is a true third position. It stands outside the right and the left. While the right and the left, it's essentially two sides of the same coin. It's going to end up in the same, a small minority with all the power and them controlling all of the wealth, most of the wealth and the raw materials of the land.
Okay. So like, do you think there's any crossover with like or I mean, I guess there is crossover, but how far does it go on like things like issues like cannabis, some of our people are asking about, or gun rights? What are the fascist takes in those things? Is this like would American version of fascism prop up gun rights and have that as, you know, an important aspect of the culture that needed to be protected, or would that be another thing that would need to go by the wayside to prepare the society for this new fascist uprising?
Well, I think cannabis should be legalized to the extent that alcohol is. I think it's ridiculous. It got classed as what it did. But and same with guns. It's like I said, there's going to be aspects of American culture that fascism is going to have to be in tune with, and gun rights is something unique to Americans. It's Pandora's box. Whether it's better or not, it doesn't matter. This is something Americans want to hold on to. So this is something we will always have. I think it's more beneficial to have it. I personally believe and understand when I talk about what I personally believe, I'm not talking about any like, oh, this is what American fascism will look like. I don't think we quite know what it will look like yet, but I'm just saying from third position beliefs, you know, I draw my personal opinions, and my personal opinion is we should have, all youth should do 6 months to a year in land beautification projects and 6 months to a year mandatory military service to train themselves how to use a firearm and to always have this ability. So not only should Americans have guns, they should all be trained properly on how to use these things. So yeah, these are definitely things. American fascism has to be Americana. I know a lot of people are going to be sketchy about that and say, well, how can you do that? It's so totalitarian. It's so against the individual. But it's really not. It's really a different concept of liberty, essentially, than just the individualistic pursuit of liberty. So yeah, it's going to have to be very Americana. I would say a lot of the things that Americans hold dear, whether they're conservatives or Democrats, kind of overlap with what fascism promotes, what American fascism will. So these are aspects of American culture that will have to be a part of whatever coming American fascism comes about.
Okay. So there's a new movement. Well, I don't know if it's new, but the popular movement among the Republican parties, or many Republicans in the United States today, is it's kind of neoconservative conservatism, right? This paleoconservatism. So Vincente asks, how do you feel about them? You know, the neoconservatives like George Bush, like McCain. Uh, would you consider them just completely opposed to this kind of fascist philosophy, these ideals that you're pushing to, or are they like somewhere along that line?
No, anyone elected in Congress or Senate will be completely against this, and we're completely against them. I see no pardon for these people, especially the neoconservatives. I think they're guilty of, personally, I think they're guilty of so much treason that righteous justice should fall upon them. And it's not, yeah, there's nothing conducive with them and fascism at all. They've had the chance to show who they were, and they've shown us who they were, and they really didn't give two shits about America or the lies they told America or their warmongering. So it's yeah, there's nothing fascistic about them, and like I said, I view these people as treasonous to our country.
Okay, so actual communist boy has a question that he just asked that I think is pretty interesting. I'm gonna unmute you, Mr. Communist, and you can go ahead and ask it yourself.
Sure. So when you say that third position takes the best from left and right, can you explain why policies rooted in different ethical philosophies and different economic theories would work well together?
Why they would work good? Well, I mean, I don't know. It depends what you're asking. What economical theories are you specifically referring to? What social theories are you referring to? It's kind of too general of a question to answer.
Define the third position as taking the best from the left and the best from the right. So, for example, you talked about having education apparently be nationalized. which is usually a left position, and a lot of rightist social positions. Yet the goals of these are usually pretty different. So why do you think that these would work well together?
Why nationalized education and what would work well together?
Sure. So basically, the question is, why would, say, a social position on the right side, which is usually aimed at maintaining some sort of social hierarchy, and a economic or social position on the left side, which is usually aimed at trying to destroy some social hierarchy, play well together?
Because they don't play well together. Yeah, you can't have something that aims at destroying hierarchy and something at promoting hierarchy. Nationalized education creates hierarchy through merit. And I think that's the difference in fascism as opposed to, I don't know, conservatives say they're about merit too. So, but how true is that when the game's kind of rigged from the start? I don't know, that's open for debate. But I think they both aim at hierarchy. It's just hierarchy of meritocracy. The fascist believes the natural hierarchy in man exists and will always exist, and it's not a bad thing. It's actually a good thing. We want the people who through merit, ideally, get into these positions to make these decisions. So I think they work well with each other. It's not taking, when I say we take what works from the right and what works from the left, we're not talking philosophical, we're talking application. So the application of nationalizing or socializing education and healthcare from the left, and then the concept of hierarchy or competition in the right, these things can work well within each other, but not taking the core philosophies of the right and the left with it, just using the application of each process instead to reach a desired outcome.
Do I have one more?
Go for
Do I respond? Okay,
Yeah, go.
sure. So generally, we say that hierarchies are anti-meritocracy because they tend to be somewhat rigid. It's hard for you to advance when there's like a huge social stigma against you. So, for example, gays would not easily advance in your society because they're gay, because they're stigmatized, because you call them unnatural. And so this would not lead to a full meritocracy because gays would be held back. So how, again, do you reconcile these views?
Well, you're just creating a viewpoint there. That's not a reality. That's, if someone is, when we look at merit, at the core of merit, it doesn't matter if you're, 7 feet tall or 5 feet tall. It doesn't matter. If you can play basketball and make the basket, you play the game, essentially. You're going to play the position. You're going to win the position. It doesn't matter if someone's gay. They're not stigmatized on this anymore. Even though it is, you can say, well, this is a neurological imbalance that creates someone being homosexual or that creates someone being transsexual, for sure. But can you cure that? Can you change that? No. So are you going to crucify the person from what they're born? No, that would be silly. So merit speaks for itself. If a gay person, if a woman, if a whatever achieves what they desire to achieve through their own work, through their own intellect, then we should want that person in that position.
Okay. You got a follow up for that, communist?
I don't want to take everyone else's time, so it's fine.
Okay. So I've got a question here from actually, I'm gonna go with kind of breaking it up a little bit. Where did you get your name, Cultured Thug, and does it have what does it have to do with your beliefs? And this comes from Mouth, who's a user here.
It's from the Jonathan Bowden quote about the culture thug essentially being the modern day equivalent of the philosopher warrior. And to me, I've lived my life and been through many violent exchanges and got into a lot of trouble and kind of lived thuggish at times. And I'm a very cultured person as far as I've read a lot. I thought a lot about these things and I care about things that, I don't know, most people don't care about today. I look back in history and I see the character of man seems so much better and true then. So these are kind of ideals that try to manifest into the modern age. And so for me, I've used a couple monikers online: Quest, Eye for Knowledge, Culture Thug, and everything I've used kind of what was a part of something about me. And I thought the Culture Thug quote really spoke to me, really kind of nailed me. If I can make an internet moniker that would explain me, the Culture Thug was the perfect one.
Okay. So we've got another user that wants to speak to you directly. And that is Disciple Fiore, and has another question on transsexualism. So I'm going to go ahead and unmute him or her. Eventually. Hopefully she's in here. 1 second. Actually don't see her in the chat. Okay, we'll go with someone else's question for now. Let's go with Mr. August Gold. And that is, oh wait, there she is. Okay. So Fiore, you're up. You're unmuted. Go for it.
Okay. Hello?
Oh no, that's Fiore's up right now. Go for it, Fiore.
Can I see where the original question was? Because I don't remember what my exact wording was.
Sure, 1 second. There's a question on transsexualism, right?
Was
It is in chat for you.
okay. How do you feel about transsexuality, and what do you think should be done in regards to trans people? And do you think trans people transitioning is okay?
Okay, how do I feel about them? I think it is. I don't want to sound callous about it, but it's kind of the way I feel about bipolar people. I think they were born with something that was manifested through, I guess, some imbalance, whether in the hormones in their brain. And it's something that science can look into. What can be done about it is, I think science can look into it. And most homosexual people I've met, and I've asked the question, if there was a pill and you could become straight, would you take it? Most have said yes. I think this is something we should work for, because I think, man, whether you believe in nature, religion, whatever it is, it seems the course of man is to breed and continue on the species as we die. And we see with homosexuals and with transsexuals, this becomes a little hard to do, at least naturally. So what should they transition? No, I don't think. I think if they can privately afford to pay for a transition, they should. I don't think the state, they should have the ability to. I don't think the state should ever have to pay for anything like that. And I saw someone asking about military bans. I think this is one of the reasons why it was good to ban them from the military, because many of them were taking advantage of the military and just joining essentially to get the surgery paid for. So yeah, if you can privately afford it, I don't see why society would have a problem with it. But at the same time, I'm like a believer in the old school. If you have a penis and you're transitioning to be a girl, then you have to use the male's bathroom. You can't go into females. But it's like I think that defines. I'll just take the answer a little further and throw that in there. But yeah, I think it is something science should look at and work on, and shouldn't be taboo. I think most people born transgender and homosexual are fine with the ability to become straight. They would take that advantage, or they would take that opportunity if it was there. And outside of that, taxpayers shouldn't pay for someone's desire, whether it's a natural desire they can't help or not, to transition. But if the individual can afford it himself, I don't see why there would be a problem with that.
I have one follow-up question.
Go for it.
Now,
Go on.
part of the reason why people join the military and stuff like that, and they get healthcare benefits, is because of like mental things and stuff like that they have. Do we also apply this logic to pretty much every other mental illness or disorder that requires like medical intervention with medication or surgery?
Yes, I would think so. That would make sense to me, at least.
So we think like people, like for example, if they have like psychological issues, they should just pay for medication, stuff like that, privately. If somebody has like tumor or something like that, they should have to pay for it to be removed privately.
Yeah, I see what you're doing. You're equating that with a treatment like that. I guess you can take that approach. I guess you can take that approach. Well, hey, this is kind of hypocritical. You're saying a transgender person has to pay for their change, while someone who fights cancer is getting help through the state. So I can see if you take that position, you would have. I'm not even saying you're wrong taking that position. I'm not even saying that it's not completely that there's not a level of hypocrisy. That's what I'm saying, because I do believe with real transsexuals, I do believe as things get trendy and you have weird parents, forcing kids to take pills and shit, you kind of induce that. But I do believe with real people with that, I see your point. I just also, once again, we have to look at the greater good. And when you're asking, so if you're saying, look, we should have transsexuals be able to be paid for through nationalized healthcare, and you have a large proportion of the people saying this is bullshit, why are we paying for this? we have to start looking towards the common good there again. So I would understand. I don't look at it the same way you do, but I'm not even going to argue and say you're wrong with how you would interpret it, saying, why would you treat cancer like this, but you're not going to treat transsexualism like this, because it is also something, an affection that they're born with that they have no control over. I do think there's a different societal and cultural view of it that divides people. And I think the best way to stop that division is have that kind of meet in the middle where the people, the taxpayer, will not be on the line for that, but the individual will be able to do that through their own pay. So I hope that answers your question. But you are right. There is hypocrisy to my answer.
Okay, so we've got a question next from Zotanis.
Was he happy with that? I wanted to hear his.
Oh, let's find out.
I'm actually really happy and satisfied with that answer.
Okay, cool.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, Zotanis, you're up. Let me go ahead and unmute you. Go ahead and ask your question.
Oh, okay. Thanks. By the way, I love your YouTube channel. I've been watching it for a while.
Awesome. Thanks.
Okay, so this one's actually more on the idea of like agrarianism. So it's a bit of a long question, so I'm just going to read it. From what we see inside the concept of agrarianism, the feeling of home was very different in the days when a family fed on the produce of the same few miles of country for 6 generations. There was a real connection between them and the countryside. What had been earth and air, later corn, later still bread, really was in them. We, of course, who live on an international diet in the modern age, are really artificial beings and have no connection with any place on earth of our own soil. We are synthetic men uprooted. The strength of the hills is no longer ours. Instead, we find sanctity within the cities. When those who raise food and farm off the land eat the food they raise. I disconnected. Sorry about that.
It's okay. You're food off the land.
Yeah. They're closer to the land in which they toil their labor. Those who labor the earth are the chosen people within the relationship as they are closer to nature. Why has capitalism and communism rejected the idea of independence? Is it wrong or good? Is agrarianism good or bad within these ideas? What benefits or problems does agrarianism offer in this concept? That's basically the question. Sorry if it was so long.
Okay. Well, I mean, look at our population first off. I don't think we can, unfortunately, I don't think we can go back to that kind of life. I think as industrialization happened and people, the cities started forming and people started moving into the cities, and then medications and vaccinations came around that upped the birth of people. And then on top of that, you had, missionaries and doctors going all over the world, upping the birth of everyone else. When we created these kind of societies, we kind of destroyed any chance of having truly agrarian societies, which is unfortunate because, like you're saying, there was so much worth into working and toiling the soil, being at one with the animals, buying your food from, like, in our modern context, I go to farmers markets where I'm at here, and that's the closest I can get to any kind of farm bought products. And there's more nutrients, and it's already shown there's more nutrients in these naturally grown things. So it's more beneficial. But with our population, I don't think we can do that anymore. I think we're going more towards synthetic, and with our resources as well. I mean, there's so many with mass farming. There's so many ills to it, and not only ethically, I believe, but also environmentally. That are taking its toll on the world. So I think we're at a precipice as far as man goes, is how we're going to continue to feed ourselves. And I don't think we're going to go more towards organic farming, unfortunately. I don't think there's enough to go around for this population.
Okay. There was another part. So capitalism and communism are very key in being against agrarianism. For an example, like agrarianism enforced the caste system is like the is there reasons why they would want to do this? I just want to ask you directly, like what you think why, or if not.
Why we would have a caste system?
No, why would capitalism and communism want to get rid of agrarianism? Because it does enforce a caste system. It's just wanted to ask you directly about that.
I'm not sure I understand the question. What do you mean it enforces a caste system?
Normally, like within an agrarian society, you had a caste system of within how the community was structured. Normally, is what I'm saying.
Because I think it goes against the idea of what capitalism and communism is, right? If you have a natural caste system forming outside of communism, especially the state, it is what? You have the state, then you have the workers. So you have only two levels there. You have your state, who is essentially your aristocracy now, then you have your workers, who are your plebs of the modern age. And capitalism, same thing. It's your conglomerates, it's your international finance, it's your banks who have most of the wealth, and this becomes your caste system. They become in an agrarian society, it's not based upon that. It's based upon first communication and interchanging with people. People based on their merit, and people rising to the top of that structure are usually done through by their word, by concepts of masculine concepts of honor and things that used to be appreciated, like being able to shake a man's hand and take his word at what he says. It's like these things would promote people and these kind of societies. Today, in whether it's either material aspect of communism and capitalism, this gets in the way of that. The man of honor, it gets in the way of the businessman. The man of honor gets in the way of the man who is obsessed with the state and with turning everyone else into working class plebs, essentially. So I think it's competition as far as hierarchy, and the agrarian cultures, I think it's more based off of merit, as in these other cultures, it's more based off of one form of material or another.
All right, that
Okay.
seems like a really good answer. Thanks.
Perfect. Okay. So we've got August Gold again. He's got a question he'd like to ask himself. And
Hi
you're
there.
unmuted.
Hey, August.
So I have a deep respect for you because you're very good at talking, and I feel like that's a really big thing now. And wouldn't you agree? I feel like in the system that we're in now with capitalism, wouldn't you feel like you're given like an equal platform to speak this way? Wouldn't you feel like that would be a good reason to keep capitalism, because you have an equal platform to speak this way? And my question for you is mostly, since you talk so much about fascism, I really, really want to know what you would do to improve upon fascism, because I don't feel like if we just put it back in again, it would just work right off the bat. So I'd really like to hear what you would change to employ a better system.
Okay, first, I don't think we have an equal platform. Here I am on this Discord, here I am on this YouTube channel that gets banned frequently, trying to speak about fascism. I'm not on Fox News, I'm not on CNN. No one who advocates fascism and gives it a decent voice is ever promoted on any of these things. So I don't think there is equal footing. I think capitalism likes to give the ideal of this same starting point for everyone, but that doesn't exist. That's idealism. And what was the second? Refresh my mind on what the second part of it. Oh, to improve upon fascism.
Yeah.
Totally Americana. We have to go Americana with it. It's when we look at fascism. This is when we look at the core of what fascism is. And everyone always looks at Italy or Germany and they try to define fascism to this. I've seen so many videos where people make their little lists of what fascism is, and they name like this function of government, this function of economy, and this is supposed to equal fascism. But when you look at fascism at its diverse background, like I said, from being in Chile to Brazil to Mexico to Spain to Portugal to Romania to Germany to et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, they were all different. They had different economic policies, they had different state policies, et cetera, et cetera. So same will be with American fascism. How we improve on it, it's Americana. We have to embrace some of the aspects Americans hold dear most and build upon that and even strengthen those things. And I just feel, I view parliamentary democracy as just a very horrible system in getting things done. And I think too many Americans have attached their identity to that thought of parliamentary democracy. So I think it's while embracing different cultural aspects of Americana, while discarding some of these cultural aspects that are held dear, even though they've been failing us by people, or at least exposing to people why we argue against these, what people would view as Americana culture, parliamentary democracy and capitalism, etc. At least making a case against these things to show why we can have a better path forward. So how we improve it is by making it Americana. It's once again, when I tell you anything I believe personally, how we should be economics, what should we do with the gays, this is all my personal opinion. What American fascism will be something that are agreed upon by patriotic Americans who are looking for solutions outside of the right-left spectrum that we're stuck in right now.
Right, right. But when you're put in the spotlight like this, wouldn't you agree that your opinion is really important here?
That's why I give it.
Yeah,
that's why I give it. But I just want to preface it with saying, like, I'll argue for my opinions. I think they're right because they're my opinions, right? But I want to preface it with saying, this isn't carved in stone. This isn't telling you exactly what American fascism will be. Like, maybe if I run on a local platform, this is exactly what my positions will be. But as far as anything that can come in the future that would call itself fascistic, I think that's still yet to be determined. But I think using American culture, building on Americana, is the important part of our fascism.
Could you define Americana? Because that really doesn't make sense to me. I don't understand what that means.
Essentially manifest destiny. The old American ideal of conquering the West, the old American ideal of exploring the new land, gaining, learning more, achieving more, building upon this. I think these—
That wouldn't be fascism, though. That would be nationalism, would it not?
It's kind of synonymous in a sense. Nationalism is an aspect of fascism. That would be fascism in a sense. Like I said, when you get to the core of fascism is what? United man towards a common goal. So when you have this collective manifest destiny kind of direction, that is completely fascistic. That is saying we are working together to achieve wonderful things, and we're on this path. And this gives us our reason for life, our reason for working outside of simply getting a paycheck, which is most our reasons for working right now. It gives something else to that. And I think touching into that manifest destiny it goes synonymous. This is why I think fascism can definitely go across in America, because I
totally agree with you. Yeah.
Okay. Because, so much. Go on.
Because when you say that all work is based off the paycheck right now, that is because of a problem here. That is because of a problem, and it is the education system. It's because we're taught to just learn and work.
Can you put that into a question?
Yeah. How would you improve the education system? Because that would take the problem and throw it out the door with the people who are manifesting their destiny, as you said.
Well, like you touched on, critical thinking. They don't teach you critical thinking in school. It's indoctrination. That's it. It's be smart enough to work this job, but not smart enough to desire more out of life. And this is it. Be the cog in the wheel and continue on. And that's it. So critical thinking, I think, is a large part of what we're missing in modern day education. We completely avoid that topic. And even when we go into universities, they try to tell you they're going to let you critically think. But if you take a position that's against them, trust me, I know, I fucked up my whole college life doing it, you will get trounced. You will get failed. You get kicked out of classes. You have to speak with the dean over and over again. It gets ridiculous. So they don't even open up critical thinking in the universities. It's all indoctrination. I think one of the simple fixes is enhancing critical thinking more than indoctrination, getting people to think for themselves. Because the fascists, even though everyone thinks it's totalitarianism, you can't argue against the government, the fascist wants the people thinking about better ways forward. How can we improve upon this? This is how we grow. So critical thinking, long story short, is one thing we can implement right away into education system that we do not have today.
Okay, thank you, August. So Autistic Anglophile has a question coming up now that he'd like to ask himself. Go on, Autistic.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I'm unmuted. Okay, yeah. Sorry, I've traditionally had a bad mic. So I just started watching your YouTube channel actually like 2 weeks ago. It's pretty interesting. So the question I had was, you said you value like fascism, right? Because it's a third position. So it doesn't value materialism. It fundamentally values, some sort of higher goal for the people, some sort of worthy cause, that's beyond just, a simple profit, beyond a simple monetary value. So I was going to ask you, like, what do you think about other kind of third position sort of ideologies that also kind of shunt the materialist value, like for instance, like monarchism or like paleoconservatism, or I guess you could argue even religious fundamentalism if you tie religion into culture. Like, what do you like? Do you think that fascism is the only like ideology that basically can restore like the culture or the pride in a people, like that can protect the national identity? Or do you see like other ideologies, like monarchism, especially because monarchism was famous for God save the queen, encouraging people to live up to something higher than themselves? Like, what do you think about other ideologies that basically also uphold this worthy higher cause and kind of reject that purely monetary, purely materialistic worldview?
I think they've shown, yes, I agree. There are different philosophies, especially the political philosophies based behind the religions that are anti-materialistic. I just think they've all shown themselves to fail as far as monarchy. I think the blood hierarchy had shown that it was too much like Hitlerism in a sense where too much was on the whim of the king. They can change their mind at any time and change the rule. I mean, we go through Henry V, was it? That changed the whole religion just to marry a different girl. It's like, yeah. So, I mean, we went through problems like that. With the theocracy, we went through, like, they stifled science for so long. They were killing people for just questioning God. It's like, that goes too far when you're not letting people, question this, why we're here. It's so I think I think there's good aspects to them all, and there's definitely, I can romanticize, I can look back at when the Catholic Church ran Italy and see the positive aspects of it, but I can also see a lot of negative aspects of it that eventually harmed them in the end. Like, one of the arguments I make for fascism was like, oh, you lost in World War II. It's like, well, we had to get killed by the sword. Fascism has never fallen on its own. I think we've seen all these other philosophies had their good points. I'm not throwing the baby out with the bathwater with them. I think we can learn from them all, and I think they're all better than this modern day democracy. But I do see there's too much shortcoming. There's too many flaws in it. I think we need to learn from that and take what's good from them and build on from there.
So I would say, like, are you like generally opposed then to like oligarchies, any sort of concentrations of power, essentially? And if so, like, how would you prevent a fascist system from potentially running into the same pitfalls that like religious theocracies or like monarchies or other such, more oligarchical, institutions fall into? Because, in a fascist system, you're essentially relying on the state to look out for and protect the culture and the national identity of the people. So, like, what sort of, checks and balances would you have to prevent, the fascist system from, becoming that kind of devolving into that totalitarian mindset, like you said, is kind of a problem with like monarchies?
That was Henry VIII, by the way.
Okay, Henry VIII. There you go. The damn song. I was trying to think of the song when I was saying it, but yeah, it's so I think you have to have, once again, we get rid of the Hitlerism of the aspect. We get rid of the king. You have to have a code of ethics and laws, and these need to be respected. How do you spot corruption when these aren't respected anymore? How do you have a check over a leader? You have a committee over that leader that decides, hey, we found out you're doing this, or you're not doing this, and this is what the goal of society is. And instead you're doing this, or you're using your power to do this. So I think if we adhere to the law and not some simple, oh, it's a living document, we're going to argue about what the law is, something set in stone and something essentially masculine as far as the ethics behind it. I think holding leaders in the system to this is our best way, because how do you stop corruption? How do you stop that? Everything's corruptible. It doesn't matter what system it is. Doesn't matter what's going on. Like I said last night when we were talking, pussy can corrupt a guy. So let alone power can corrupt a guy all day long. So it's like, how do you keep this in check? If we can't bank on them being true citizens who want something better of life too, want to just contribute to that and serve their role, be it a leader position or not, they have to adhere to the ethics and the codes of the society. And I think that's our best way once they start violating that, because you see they violate the Constitution all day today, but there's no repercussions for that, right? It's just court battles and legal things drawn out. It's when there's immediate repercussion for corruption. I think we cut down corruption a lot.
But that's like a pretty basic argument, just like threat of fear. Like, don't you think it would be more like, because if you're going to have a fascist system, you have to have a virtuous people, right? You have to have a people who value, like, non-degenerate ideologies. So, like, do you think perhaps, instead of just settling with, oh, we should just follow the law or else, you get hammered, don't you think maybe something like some sort of revised education system perhaps that teaches like non-degenerate values, like, because I think ultimately you have to move beyond
that goes without saying,
like non-degenerate behavior. Like there has to be some sort of like cultural shift, I think, that like goes along with it.
100%. I'm sorry, that goes without saying. I think that's, let me preface that. Yes, it's a whole changing of the culture of the society and what you believe in and what you value. It's a whole, look at how many followers Kim Kardashian has. It's taking all those people and convincing them there is something more deeper in life than her ass or who she's fucking or anything like that. Yes. So I'm sorry I didn't preface that with everything, but to me, that goes without saying. Yes. We need a complete overhaul of the education system, of the culture, of the ethics of this country. And we can't do that. We can start that at a small level. We can be the vanguard, and then we can fight for political position with that. But we can't truly change that until we have the seat of power. So it's like we can do what we can to get a vanguard passionate enough to fight for this in the political system. But to officially do that, to the level where we need power to do that. So yes, without a doubt, 100% agree with you. And we need to do that, or it's fruitless. It's pointless to do it at that. How are we going to convince people of fascism when, like, no, fuck that. I got 200 channels, a sofa, all the porn and Big Macs I want. Or why would I want to work for anything or struggle for anything? So yeah, we have to kill that whole kind of concept.
Okay, so you kind of touched on religion earlier with what was it, Henry VIII and Catholicism, theocracy. Yep. So this is a question, or this topic's been kind of touched on with a lot of people's questions. So I'm going to unmute Rastin now. He's one of our mods here, because he's got a question about Catholicism specifically. Go on, Rastin.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
All right. Catholicism maintains the philosophy of natural law and a universal moral order. Do you think this is compatible with fascism?
Yeah, it is. In fact, that's why I think you see the Catholics and a lot of fascist kind of organizations, whether Spain or Portugal, we're kind of, in Italy, we're kind of integral in that. I think if we look at any of the religions that are most fascistic, the Catholics, traditional Catholics would be definitely most in tune with it, I would say. So yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Wow. Okay. That's pretty simple. So Kia asked a question. I think I've noticed a lot of these, vague questions in chat here. So Kia's got a question regarding Mein Kampf. She says, since you liked Mein Kampf, do you also agree with Hitler's sentiments on the Jewish people?
Yeah, I gotta say I largely do. I know that goes against me, but I gotta say a lot of his gripes and complaints about the Jews were pretty accurate. And when you look at Germany and the especially the Weimar Republic and the Jews' position, I think we see a trend with them. They naturally, it's not even conspiratorial in my mind. It's just natural that they make society unconsciously, in the most part, conducive to their strengths. And so when you go into a nation that's rooted from the soil, that's a people that's been there for thousands of years, that built this culture, and you're coming in as a foreigner, you're not going to be able to adapt well and climb the ladder underneath their rules because you haven't lived those for 1,000 years. You have no attachment to it. You have no understanding of the traditions and the society and the culture. So you're going to do the best to create it to where, like I said, unconsciously for the most part, into something that fits into your strengths. So while they were doing this in Germany, this was viewed as an attack on German ethics, German morality, something different from what they were. So Hitler's stance on them as viewing them as hostile to Germany, I think generally was accurate. But at the same time, you've had, and another example, they overblow the anti-Semitism of Nazi Germany. You had many cases of half Jews and quarter Jews serving in the German military, and even Hitler's bodyguard essentially was either half or quarter Jewish. And he got him into the SS. So you see, like, once again, it's when you have the avatar, they can bend the rules whenever they want. I'm not happy with that, but that's just the reality of it. But I think as far as the Jewish question goes, yes, he was right to address the question and right to say there needs to be some kind of reasoning to this. And so you can talk about what the actions were of the Nazis after that. That's a different debate. But I think initially, yes, he was right to question the Jews and to say, we don't think they're loyal to Germany. We think they're not loyal to our traditions, our culture, who we are. In fact, we think they're counter it. And they're getting into positions where they can officially change it. And so they attacked it and wanted them out of their country. And I do think he had a legitimate argument with the stance he took.
Could I respond to that?
Yeah, so this is Kia. Go ahead.
So, but German Jews were the most assimilated Jews in Europe, like out of every country. And they participated in the German military in World War I. There were even Jewish generals in World War I for Germany. How is that not participating in the culture?
Saying they're the most simulated of all the Jews isn't saying much. That's the problem, because they were assimilated nowhere until after the French Revolution. And then the ghettos, they kind of all came out of the ghettos and the laws were passed that made them equal. But even having that, yes. So are you going to say, well, there are some Jews that were patriotic to Germany that probably got the short end of the stick? For sure. I don't deny that. But when we're speaking generally about the Jewish people in Germany, no, they were hostile to what Germany was. And once again, you see this not only with when they called out a lot of these people that were in positions that were doing this, whether in media and burlesque shows and everything else, but the backlash from the Jews supporting Jews over Germans. In fact, in Goebbels' diary, one of his frustrations he was going into early in his life as a National Socialist was these Jews won't assimilate. And this is something that's followed them for eternity. They're a nation within a nation. They always hold more loyalty to themselves than the host nation they live in. Now, generally, this is true. I wish it wasn't. The Jewish question is very, it starts a lot of arguments and it's a very hot topic. And I wish it's something we can avoid. But unfortunately, it's something that's thrown in everyone's face. And like I believe with everything, we just need to have adult conversation on it. So I do think generally Hitler was accurate. Even what you're saying is true, but it wasn't the general theme of the Germans. And even the Germans fighting in World War I wouldn't have supported, a percentage of them wouldn't support what the National Socialists were supporting. They were happy with the parliamentary democracy that was existing in Germany. And so, yeah, there's truth to what you say, but it's not a general truth. I think there's more of a general truth to Hitler's claims than anything else.
What's the evidence for that?
The whole Weimar Republic. You would have. There's a book called Jewish Influence in the Weimar Republic, and it goes into the positions they held in the media, in the burlesque shows, as lawyers, as business owners, and what they promoted and pushed forth. That we would say. I say one thing about Mein Kampf that stood out to me so much was when Hitler was describing what the Jews were trying to do to Germany, I realized that was the America I lived in. And that really, really fucked me up because I saw everything. He's like, they want to do this. They want to do this. They want to do this. And I realized like, holy shit, I live in everything they wanted to do. And that really, really made me question everything and have to start digging into it and figure out how and why these things happen. I think you'll see it if you look into the percentages of the jobs held and the positions held and the positions taken. When you look at a lot of the leading social democrats and a lot of the leading Marxists in Germany, they were Jewish, and the hierarchy was Jewish of this as well. As when you look into the international finance as well, everything he went on about, you saw their hand disproportionately in. And we see the same thing in America. It's like when Glenn Beck, who was a huge Israel lover, he made his list of 10 worst people in America, and like 9 or 8 of them were Jews. And then, he got all kinds of backlash from that. And then he had to, cry and grovel and go over there and kiss the wall and all that stuff. But it just showed you like, he wasn't even aware, but they were just naturally at attacking the traditions of a culture because it wasn't conducive to their strengths, these host cultures they were in. So like I said, it's not even conspiratorial in my mind. It's not even protocols of Zion. It's just natural group evolution behavior. And so I think there was generally truth. And like I said, you can look it up, the stats of the positions held and the philosophies promoted by a lot of the higher up Jews in Germany. And you'll see there is, if you take the traditional stance that Hitler and a lot of the right-wing parties had at the time, you could see how the large part of Jewry was against that.
Can I ask you something?
Of course, that's why I'm here.
You're saying the Weimar Republic, but that's such a vague term. Like, could you give me an example? What was so wrong that the Jews in the Weimar Republic?
The burlesque shows is one they put forth. They enhanced the. There's a book called Unclean Lips that goes into Jews' history and kind of putting pornography, getting it normal in the consciousness of a people. The burlesque shows were one of the big things. It was.
Who was doing that?
Numerous Jewish theater owners.
So
Okay.
theater owners. Okay, well.
Yeah. Okay. So you kind of touched on you know what's happening in the United States right now, right? And I think earlier you mentioned like you mentioned sorry, I'm just getting the end. So earlier you mentioned the Bushes, you know, and the treasonous actions and all that sort of stuff. So one of our regular users here, his name's Primary Source, wants to ask you a couple questions about that. So I'm gonna go ahead and unmute him.
Cool. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, I can hear you.
Wonderful. Too easy. So I got a few questions. So sadly, there's a great public narrative that the NSA spies or did spy on US citizens, violating the law. And this has become a bit more public thanks to the incompetent man known as Snowden. The assessment by the public is, of course, incorrect when you fact-check the leaks, the declassified documents by PCLOB, the joint semi-annual ODNI, DOJ, NSD compliance reports, the internal reports, physics documents, memorandums, opinions, IG reports. Do you agree with this? Of course, that was loaded as shit. I do apologize. Do you agree with this public narrative and agreement with Snowden that the NSA has spied or did spy on US citizens violating the law?
I think they spy on anyone they want to unchecked. I know for a fact I was hacked into my computer in 2005 or 6, somewhere around there, 2005 or 4, somewhere around there. And because I had a file on my computer that could have been in violation of my parole officer. And it was found out through the local ADL. And if the local ADL can have that kind of access to people's information, I have no doubt the NSA has and done over and over again. I think the law is only something they use when it benefits them. I think when the law doesn't benefit them, they have no problem with breaking it.
Okay. Well, with that assessment of more or less local law enforcement, I would challenge that notion with regards to the whole apparatus that's involved with the NSA, the FBI, and all that, because this leads into the question of do you think they have enough oversight, being that, you know, for an FBI agent to do a threat assessment and then to get, for example, a FISA application, as it's actually called, not a warrant, on a US citizen, this goes through a number of checks and balances throughout the FBI's NSLB, the attorneys within the NSD and ODNI, and then eventually gets to the court. And that's because of the information they could be dealing with here, actual content of a lot of stuff of US person. That's why it's got all these checks and balances in place. Do you think that's a correct assessment? Because we do know through all these leaks, these declassified stuff through FOIA and what else, that there are these balances in place, and they've demonstrated their ability to follow all these procedures almost to the letter every single time. Every now and you get an issue of non-compliance. Do you think they have enough oversight?
I guess the more of my answer is I don't trust their oversight or care for the oversight or listen to the authenticity of their oversight, But to the general theme of your question, I do believe it is okay for the government to look into people and look into their private lives to figure out if there's a threat assessment. I don't think it's okay to persecute people because of what they find out that's outside of what they were looking for. So there's that duality there. But ethically, I think that's right. But as far as their oversight goes, I just don't trust it. So it wouldn't matter to me. But ethically, I don't think there's a problem with what they're doing and what they're looking for if it can save American lives, etc.
Okay. Yeah. The next one would be with the old Bush thing that you're saying was treasonous and all that, as Doopy alluded to before. So why do you say they were treasonous? Like you briefly did mention off the cuff that they were pushing for war and all that, be it McCain, be it Bush or who else. But that does tend to ignore the underlying effort that was done by the US and most other world-leading nations, including Australia, the UK, and of course the UN as a whole, through high-level diplomatic talks for Saddam to comply with the resolutions. Do you still call that for pushing for war, despite that they, through over a decade, tried to get them to comply with UN resolutions if they could and whatnot? So do you still think that's a case of warmongering, or it's just a case of, well, you keep violating and going against constant attempts to use diplomatic soft power and
because they didn't promote war because of that reason, right? They promoted war. They said Saddam had these weapons of mass destruction. They tried to tie Saddam in with Al Qaeda. I think the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq made no sense at all. No sense at all as American interests. Maybe there was different interests involved there that took place, but it wasn't for American interests. So they went into war on a false premise, and they never admitted to it, and they used that as an excuse. They didn't use the excuse of, hey, now we're going to go to war with these people because they've been violating these sanctions forever. Never mind, Israel's been violating a UN sanction for the last fucking 30 years, but we'll hold Iraq to that flame, of course. But we went under a false premise. I think they knew it was a false premise, and I think they used that just to get them out. And the irony of it is the first Iraq war, Rumsfeld even said, like, it just makes no sense to go in Iraq. It would displace all of Iraq if we took, in the Middle East, if we took Hussein out of there. And that's exactly what happened. I think a lot of the migrant issue we now have is because of our intervention in the Middle East. I think we've been very one-sided in our Middle East policy. And I think this is eventually one of the reasons why we're getting torn down, especially Europe is getting the brunt of this, of the migrants coming in there, because we've kind of destroyed the balance of power, the organic balance of power in the Middle East. And we've gone in there, and we do this all the time. We put up puppet dictators, whether it be South America or the Middle East, and we try to get them to bend at our will. And then the people end up overthrowing them. Then we get into all this shit, and it's like this repetitive cycle. So I think they're treasonous for that extent, that who attacked us on 9/11, if we're going to take the official story, we know it was a terrorist group, and we should figure and solely focus on this terrorist group. But the Taliban had nothing to do with it, and Saddam Hussein had nothing to do with it. We shouldn't have been over there changing their cultures, their way of life, their organic. We can disagree with, like, we cried about him gassing the Kurds, but we didn't care about him gassing the Kurds when he was fighting Iran. We supported him. So it's like, I hate this hypocrisy, and I hate that American soldiers, I'm all for war on righteous terms, but I hate having American boys and girls go over there and die for false premises, war started by politicians. That's why I say treasonous. It's like, it touches home to me growing up in a military family, to see the honor and braveness of our soldiers be misused in that way. I think there's nothing more treasonous than that, in my personal opinion.
Yeah. So to do with the Afghanistan, because the people wanted to push Afghanistan, 9/11, right? You had a group, Al Qaeda, attack America on September 11, 2001, and that group was aided and abetted, creating a safe haven for them in Afghanistan by the Taliban. So I'll address the Afghanistan bit in a moment, but on Afghanistan, with that basic, in a sense, an axiom of what happened, could you then agree to the Afghan conflict?
No, once again, because if you're going to hold That's like holding an American
What
that
is
hides,
fascism?
abets a criminal, let's say we're from Israel, right? And then attacking all of America because a group of, let's say they're Democrats and a Democrat's in office, is attacking all of America and destroying all of America and changing their whole government system because they aid and abet a criminal. No, it was a terrorist group. It was a small group of people. If we're accepting the official story, then that should have been what was targeted. Instead, I think they went to, for whatever reasons, they went to these massive wars. And I don't think they were righteous wars or valid wars. I don't see, like I said, I don't see like the excuse of wiping out governments and ways of these governments being run simply because even if we accept they're aiding and abetting this terrorist, that we should wipe out the whole government structure and then implant something more to our liking there. I think this is what keeps getting us heat in America, and we keep making this same mistake. So yeah, I don't see it on any level as righteous. I understand what you're saying. You could say, look, the Taliban hit him, therefore we got to wipe them all out. I don't think that's morally or accurate enough of a reason to go in and wipe out the stability of a whole region because we say they're hiding a terrorist in the mountains here or there.
Okay. So I think Clone has a question for you.
Yeah. I was just wondering, how do you think it is that fascism is compatible with Americanism and the structure of government as outlined by our Constitution?
Well, it's not completely it can't completely intermix with each other, of course. There's going to be aspects of it that differ from each other. Like I said, parliamentary democracy is one in itself. All men are created equal. I mean, this philosophical foundation is built off a complete lie and a misnomer. So yeah, we have, when we get to the philosophical core of a lot of that, there is not a lot that makes sense. But I think Americans are hidden enough, are heading to enough, even with our comfort, even with everything we have right now, our hot water still goes, lights are still on, we have channels to watch, we have this great internet, we have everything going on around us that makes us comfortable. I think even with that, the more realism is starting to creep into the minds of the average American, and they're starting to realize, well, look, we can't go off of these dogmatic sayings from 300-400 years ago. So I think we can take the aspects of American culture that a lot of people value, and I think we're going to attack a lot of aspects of American culture that people value, and it's going to try to draw a fine line between them, and it's going to have to put it out there like you're either going to sink with your ship or you're going to swim to a new ship and get on there. So it's that mentality. The left, what's going to help fascism the most is the left, because they're so aggressive, they're so powerful, and they're gaining so much ground, and they continually do that, and they see the impotency of the Constitution to defend the people, the impotency of the right of the conservative to defend the people and the nation. So they're going to have to go for something more radical. So that's eventually going to push a lot of Americans, just like it did with Trump. It's going to push a lot of Americans to say, well, look, they don't agree with this amendment or that amendment, or they're wiping this out, but at least they agree with this amendment and that amendment when the left doesn't. So that's eventually the ground I think we're going to get. I think the left are our biggest propagandist right now for fascism. I think they're doing the most work, more work than I can ever do for fascism, they're doing right now. So I think that will come from. I think Americans will have to get rid of some of these things, but we will hold on to a lot more. I think the essence of the core of Americana. I think we're built off a shaky foundation and began with John Locke, philosophy and all this. I think that he's essentially wrong. I think Nietzsche schools him, but this, I think Americans will also understand this as we go into more pragmatic times.
Yeah, so you would agree that fascism is at least partially anti-American then, right? Or at least doesn't entirely agree with what Americanism is.
Of course, yeah.
And, well, fuck, I was going to say something else. Yeah, crap. Yeah, okay, I guess I'm done because I had something else I was going to address, but.
Well, if you think about it, you can pop in.
Yeah.
So random Discord account, one of our users, has a question for you, and that is a third position policy are economically left-wing and socially right-wing. In your opinion, what are the failings of social left-wing policies that causes third positionists to reject them?
Well, I think they negate the incentive of the individual's desire to gain more. I think under third position philosophy, like I said in one of my videos, we have an A to Z pay scale. Like you can't get richer than Z, which is rich enough, and you don't get poorer than A, which is not poor enough to where you can't have the basic necessities and enjoyments of life. Socialism completely takes, pure Marxist socialism takes this away. It equalifies everyone. It takes away any kind of personal pride and motivation outside of their ideal is for the state and for the nation, that and for the working class people, they will do this. Fascism kind of has this belief as well. They believe there's an amount of pride in a greater goal and contributing to a nation that you're a part of and you benefit from that exists. But on top of that, just to ensure that, there is also personal competition, and there's also personal levels of different, I guess, economic classes as well. But it's much more regulated than modern day capitalism, where you can either be homeless or Bill Gates. So I think this is one of the critiques, I think valid critiques of fascism against socialism, is that it takes away this natural drive in everyone. What Dawkins write the book, the selfish gene. This does exist in people. So the third position is always trying to find, how can we use this selfish gene? How can we use this selfish instinct in man to contribute to the collective the best? And I think they do this in having different levels of pay scales, different levels of living as well, depending on what job you're doing and what you're contributing to the society. So I think we negate the lack of motivation someone may have in a complete socialist society, where it doesn't matter too much so what job you're doing, you're kind of getting the same kind of payment for what you're doing. So which kind of, I think we saw the results in Soviet Russia as well. It didn't work. They didn't create many great products, and there wasn't much competition. I remember someone going on about the toilet paper, how they only had one brand and it sucked. It was hard. It was like sandpaper on them. So it's like this is kind of the mentality you get when you take away all competition. Fascists are very in tune with nature. They really put a lot in nature, and they know the nature of man. So it's like using even the bad aspects of nature of man to a positive quality. And I think third position philosophy tries to do this better than capitalism or communism does, with their two extremes of how to go about it.
Okay, so the random Discord account has kind of a follow-up to this question, and that is, as individuals, we benefit from a collective society. Do you believe individuals have a moral and perhaps legal obligation to give back to the society and uphold their tradition, identity, values, and values that the collectives traditionally hold? So yeah, that's kind of the question. So basically, do you think people have an obligation toward the society itself, and to the traditions of the society?
I do, and that is because you can't achieve anything by yourself. If you're not a part of the society, go out, live in the woods by yourself, in your own land, and whatever you achieve there, separated from society, fine, you have. But as far as that goes, everyone living and benefiting from a culture and society, yes, it is your duty. It is your birth inherent to go and contribute to that society, because that makes you a part of it as a whole. And like in prison, how do they punish you in prison? They put you in solitary by yourself. We are social creatures. We are united and connected with each other, whether we understand that or not. And we are part of a collective. And born into that, you should contribute to that. I do believe that is a duty. I do believe people that completely want to rebel against any kind of tradition or culture just for the sake of rebelling, I think these are essentially broken toys, antisocial personalities. These are people that have issues for whatever reasons that do this. Yes, I do think it is duty when you're born into society to contribute to that society.
Okay, so this random Discord account has one more follow-up question for that. And that is, do you believe that all the cultural values, ideals, and moral axioms that a society has is drawn from a collective identity?
Ask that again?
Do you believe that all the cultural values, ideals, and moral axioms that a society has is drawn from a collective identity?
Yes.
Okay, then this is my follow-up. Where does that collective identity come from? Is that like a racial thing? Is it a religious thing? Is it just being on the land, being around your neighbors? Like what is that thing?
Well, it depends how we want to define it. In America, it was a racial thing, but it's not a racial thing today. And in Germany, it definitely was a racial thing. And Sweden, it's a racial thing. It's an ethnic thing. So it stems from the culture of the people and the traditions of the people. A lot of that is based around the race of the people in the classical world. Now we go into an era like America, you have a European foundation as far as philosophy and state government and all of this. But now you have an intermixed population. So it opens a whole new question. But yes, that does stem from, like we spoke about what culture is earlier, it stems from the same place. It is nature, the DNA, the biology of people, and it is nurture as well. It is your environment, it's what you're grown into. And I think that is true for both. And I think in America, it's also true for both. There is an aspect of nature, having this European-based ideal and philosophy of this country. And once that's replaced, it's not America anymore, it's something different. But we also have this nurture now. We do have this 60-40 dynamic now, where 60% European and divided Europeans, right? When America was built on, you didn't have Italians there earlier. Irish were essentially the America. So it's like you have this distinction of what became white as years went on, but it was still a racial cohesion at first. And that has changed to something else. So I think it's a little bit of both. It's a little bit of nature or nurture when you go into this. Some places it's more nature than nurture, or some points in time in history it was more nature than nurture. More in the modern world, as we've become intertwined with the whole world, it's become a lot of nurture involved as well. So I think it's a little both. I think that the answer is kind of the same as where does culture stem from?
Okay, so Rocco has a few questions. So Rocco, you're in muted. Go ahead and ask. Start off with one of them.
All right, give me a second. Which one should I start with?
Well, you got a question and 2 follow-ups. So pick your favorite.
Oh, I guess going back to the whole Holocaust and Nazi Germany, all that stuff before. I was gonna ask, are you one of the people that believe in that the numbers are incorrect, or any type of conspiracies in general?
I think the numbers are irrelevant. I do know, like, we got to acknowledge this. I do know they said the number's been 6 million forever, but they've changed the number at Auschwitz numerous times. We have to acknowledge that. One of my favorite historians, no, my favorite historian is David Irving. And I think he's the truest, most down-the-line person. They call him pro-Nazi, but he's really not. These people that call him pro-Nazi have not read his books. He shits on Nazis as much as he praises them. And he's of the belief that, around the number of 6 million Jews were killed and liquidated. I tend to go with, I think the argument is mainly, was Auschwitz a main death camp, or was it Treblinka? And one of the beliefs is they turned Auschwitz into one of the main death camps because it's a better tourist attraction than Treblinka. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. I just know they've changed the number of the deaths at Auschwitz numerous times, but the general number hasn't changed too much. So to me, it's kind of irrelevant. Early on, when I was in my early 20s, I got involved with all that, and I was a Holocaust denier and all that. But the more I looked into it, I was like, it doesn't matter if they gassed as much as they said they gassed, which is kind of erroneous, because they put in the total number of killed with the total number of gassed, and a lot of the people that were killed in Poland on the Eastern Front by bullets. So it's kind of erroneous when they do that. I've noticed that with some revisionists. They try to tie the whole number 6 million as the whole number gassed, and they say the numbers don't add up. Well, of course, because not that many were gassed, a lot of them were shot. But to me, it doesn't. I don't know what the number is. I know Irving is close to the 6 million number, and like I said, I find him to be the best historian on World War II, the most knowledgeable, the most researched, and actually the most has actually met and spoken to all these Nazis. So I tend to go with what he says, and if he's saying, yeah, it's somewhere around there, I tend to agree with him.
Okay.
Okay. So kind of
Just
pulling
follow-ups, he said, or
if you want to, Rock, go for it.
Do you think fascism, if it was to be brought up again, would it work in Germany? Like if it was done differently than Hitler, of course, but.
Well, see, I'm a civic or cultural nationalist for America. I think we're just going to be a multiracial nation, and we have to live with that and get along best we can with that and figure out how to live together. I hope for Europe they become ethno-nationalists. So I do think fascism will save them. I think I think it's a shame if Germans become white, if Swedes become white, like we are in America. Just, you know, the typical white person is a mixture of different European subraces. I think that would be a shame for Europe. I think our unique expressions, wherever you're from, Chile or Sweden, I think are unique to the world, and everything offers something to the world. So it's, I would hope, yeah, I think it would save them. Do they have the will for that in Germany or Sweden or anywhere else? I don't know. I'm not a European living on the ground there. I don't know. I just know what I know from news articles and people I speak to online. So it's, yes, but I do think it could work. And I do think it's advantageous to them to do that.
All right, I'm done.
I actually remember what I was going to ask you, and is that, do you think that fascism allows for like a free market, or is fascism relatively like in specific to what economics it employs wherever it's facilitated?
Well, no, it's anti-free market in a sense where the market has to have oversight.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, the free market doesn't mean like completely, truly free without oversight. I mean, like there's minimal government intervention there.
Yes, essentially, and what we typically see in Italy and Germany, and what I believe also in America, when it comes to raw materials, I think they should be nationalized. When you have detrimental things like this, they should be nationalized, I think, so private organizations don't take control of them. I think that makes sense. But I think, yes, the free market with oversight, let me say, is the best way to go.
Okay. Yeah, because like, well, isn't it a fascistic aspect that whatever a business or company does, it has to be in the interest of the state? Or is that, or does that not always apply?
What was that? Or you broke up? Repeat that again.
Oh yeah, sorry. So is it not a fascistic aspect that whatever a business or company does by its own private ownership, operating under that, does it always have to adhere to the interests of the state, or does that not always apply?
Yeah, it has to adhere to the interest of the common good. It's like if you're selling porn, degenerate porn, and like, well, no, you not porn in a sense of like whatever considered like people shitting on each other or something like that. It's like, yeah, you're not going to support that. That is against you're fucking, you know, tearing apart the sexuality of people that are watching this, tearing apart the ability of men and women to look at each other in a different fashion when you do this. So yeah, you would go against stuff like that.
So in a way, like one of the things that capitalism allows you to do is like it allows you to do with whatever you wish. No, crap. Do whatever you wish with what you have, with the capital that you have, like you know, whatever you decide to do with it. So in a way that it's not really like that's private. What do you call it? Private ownership. There's multiple terms for it. In a way that's not necessarily fully retained then in fascism, like it is partially, but
I guess it would depend what you're doing. If you're keeping it to your own bedroom, I don't see how it would affect anything. But if you're trying to subvert policy or some way, yeah, then it would. Then you don't have the freedom to subvert policy, subvert the nation, cause discontent, promote what we consider whatever culturally, traditionally we determine. We draw the line, saying don't cross this line, and if you cross that line, yeah, there's penalties for that for sure.
Yeah, okay.
I'm just wondering, I see people in here, like in the chat, like talking mad shit. It's like, can we get some of you guys on voice?
Yeah, like that'd be nice to have some like.
Well, I actually had a question.
Go for it.
If I could ask. So I was just wondering why you said that David Irving was your favorite historian when he's not a historian and he doesn't have any history degree and was actually basically shamed in English courts and humiliated.
He wasn't shamed.
When all of his history was disproven.
It wasn't. Oh, that's such a lie. Don't even say that. That's such a fucking lie. Don't even say that.
It's not a lie. Anyone can Google it.
It is a lie. It is a lie. You should actually read the court transcripts and what was said and everything that went on with that trial, because that's complete bullshit. And the movie was complete bullshit that they did. It's disgusting. Why I say
I don't care about the movie.
Okay, but this is where all the general themes come through. So it's easily disproven by him.
Is it a lie that he doesn't have a history degree?
No, that's not a lie at all. No.
So isn't a historian in a modern society considered someone who's an expert and has at least a PhD
and
a degree, and he doesn't even have a bachelor's?
So okay, you're looking at this. Oh, I got this certificate on my wall. That means you should listen to me. Bullshit. Okay, that doesn't exist.
I
So
think it
why,
means
David?
something. It's something that's been built up by historians over 2,000 years, these standards of proof, and he hasn't been able to live up to them. I think
There
that's
isn't much
something that people should know.
standards. There isn't much standards in the university system as far as becoming a historian. Okay, you just regurgitate what you're told and you write a thesis on it and you're done. But let me tell you why I think David Irving's the best. Because there's no one that has read more in the archives than him. No one that has more researched, more so than anyone else. There's no one who has actually spoken to and met more with the people he's written books on and on the subjects he's written books on than David Irving. He has the most access to the people and to the documents of the time, whether they're in the German archives, British archives, American archives, or Russian archives. He's been that crazy bastard that has gone through all these archives to put everything together. And why they attacked him on that was because of the whole thing came through when he started questioning the Holocaust and the gas chambers, essentially, which is something he's even said he hasn't come out with the book yet, but he's coming out with the book on Heinrich Himmler. And every time David Irving comes to town, I see him speak. I go to see him speak. We speak. And he's even saying, he's like, I'm about to catch a lot of backlash from the people that love me, that support me, because when I come out with this Heinrich Himmler book, he sticks to what he finds. And it doesn't matter. Like I said, everyone tries to call him pro-Nazi. If you call him pro-Nazi, you have not read his work. This man is unbiased, and he does take favorable views of Nazis here and there, and he also puts down negative views of it. I think he is the most well-researched, the most well-read, and on top of that, has the most personal contact with the people alive in that era that were actually there. Like, I've read like 9 memoirs of the people in Hitler's inner circle. Irving knows most of them and spoken to most of them and has got the feeling on who Hitler was as a man more than anyone else on this earth. And people felt free to speak honestly with him because he is not an avid anti-Nazi, as most historians are. They're like, everything's negative about Nazis, and you read through their books, and here and there they'll have to give compliments here and there, but it's rare and it's buried deep in their books. Irving was a person that truly approached it with an unbiased view, and I hate that he gets called pro-Nazi by people that don't read his works, because
I didn't call him pro-Nazi.
No, I'm not saying you. I'm just generally speaking about usually what he's attacked against. He can't even have historical discussions without Antifa attacking it. And I'm like, for what? He tells you all the bad about Hitler as the good. So no, I think he's the best because he is the most well-researched on it. It doesn't matter if you have this degree or not. I understand what you're saying, but I hate this. Did you watch the movie Eyes Wide Shut by Stanley Kubrick? Let me ask you.
Yeah, I have.
Okay, so you see in there, Tom Cruise, his character is like, I'm a doctor, and he keeps showing his thing. He was kind of making a joke at like our willingness that as soon as someone shows us this badge of identification of authority, that we're just like, oh yeah, you must know what he's talking about. We kind of had this same kind of view with people. Oh, he's got this degree, he must know what he's talking about. In fact, one of my goals before I run for office is to go back to college and finish my degree, just because that's so prominent in people. So I get a degree in history. I'm still going to be pro-fascist. So what would be the argument against me? It's like, I got my doctorate and all this. So I understand why you're saying what you're saying, but as someone who's really looked into Irving, who's really tried to find like a center voice on history, I found him to be the most authentic. And I hate that he gets called pro-Nazi when he's really not. In his works, it's as clear as day that he's really not. He just gives an unbiased, and maybe even you could say little favorable, because he gives compliments when others won't to these people. So to me, he's the most, even though he doesn't have the certificate that's so valuable, he to me is the most well-researched, in depth. He's lived his life for this. He's gone to prison for this. So I mean, it's to me like that speaks for itself. Every other historian I've read on Hitler's Germany, they're the same. They're the same, and I hate it. It's so boring. It's hard to read because it's like they
Maybe
create.
they're the same because that's where all the proof is.
No. It's not about proof. It's about how they interpret the events is what matters. They can take the same event and interpret completely differently. And all these historians typically will interpret these things as the worst case scenario, and they will cherry pick certain areas and certain laws. But it's not It's not what Irving does. He, like I said, he's given both pros and cons to everything he's spoken about. And to me, outside of being the most well-researched, and I think this goes without saying, I would like to see someone disprove that, but outside the most well-researched on this topic and the most in touch with the people they're actually writing books on and getting the conversations from these people that a lot of these historians can't. A lot of these historians read other people's books and write books off of it. So it's kind of, it's silly. So to me, he's the most authentic of it. Maybe it's a personal opinion. Like if you would disagree with that, I would like to know like why and how and who would be better, would you say?
Actual Holocaust historians, and there are historians that disagree with, about various points within the Holocaust, but there's some evidence, there's enough evidence to at least have some basic facts about what happened. And a lot of those basic facts he denies. And those
he doesn't.
He literally proved in a court of law that, and what I would wonder is why hasn't any university, any accredited university, even given him any kind of respect or even allowed him to publish with their name when, and I don't really want to hear the answer that it's like,
because you know that's the answer.
No,
because you know that's the fucking answer. That's why you're saying that.
That it's this Jewish conspiracy that's controlling it because they don't want this narrative to be fought, because everyone knows that most academics are incredibly anti-Israel and regularly posting things and regularly publishing items that are very anti-Zionist. So if these Jews, these supposed Jews that are behind pulling the strings that are preventing Holocaust deniers from speaking their truth and being published, then why aren't they preventing anti-Zionists from doing so?
No, that's such a rigged fucking statement. Don't say what the obvious answer is. You can't get away with saying anything that even looks favorable to anything the National Socialists did. You'll lose your fucking job. Whatever your job is, you'll fucking lose it if you take any position that is not Nazis were demons that murdered all these Jews and they're monsters. Of course they're not going to promote that stuff. Are you kidding me?
Historians do publish a lot of things that are favorable to Germans. And there have been some fantastic historian publishing works about
Give me some examples. Give me some specific examples about what are you saying that's academically accepted that would go against anything David Irving had said, or they would co-align with anything David Irving has said. There is not
not anything David Irving would say, because he only says lies.
He only says what?
Lies.
See, now what David Irving books have you read?
All of them.
So start telling me some lies.
He lied about whether or not Hitler knew about the Holocaust, and that was proven in a court of law.
It was not proven in no court. How are you going to prove something about someone who's dead?
They proved it with primary documents and with evidence.
They didn't. So here's in fact the reality of it. Here's in fact the reality of it. This is kind of the belief that that Himmler himself was responsible through most of the Holocaust. And once again, what you're talking about, David Irving in his book, in his book on Heinrich Himmler, goes into a fucking memo from them that says, don't report this to the Fuhrer, telling him he doesn't need to know about this. The theory is that Hitler knew something was going on, but didn't know the specifics of the people being killed. This is the theory. None of this is proven. To say this is provable, this is fucking laughable, because there's no document that exists that prove Hitler read anything about any death counts as far as people getting gassed in the camps. Nothing that exists. But the theory is he knew generally what was going on, but not the numbers. And Himmler kept the numbers from him because it was a high count, according. And this is even something Irving states, and this is something that's coming out in his book on Himmler. So that's a fallacy. There is no, to bring up something from the 1980s where, who was it? It was an execution expert went into there and tested the walls for Zyklon B. So you have an execution expert go into the place, and you know the gas chambers were recreated in Auschwitz, so of course you're not going to find Zyklon B in them. And even in the places where they said they were the gas chambers, the rubbles, they couldn't find Zyklon B in them. So what is a logical mind to accept? It's like saying I shot someone, but I have no gunpowder burns on my arm. So you know what? Maybe I didn't shoot someone then, because there's no gunpowder burns on my hand. This is usually how they'll figure that out. They'll put you underneath a light that shows you the gunpowder burns under your hand that you get from shooting a gun, and they'll know, oh, you're lying to us, you're shooting a gun. So they didn't find Zyklon B on anywhere that they said the gas chambers in Auschwitz were. So a logical man's going to say, huh, maybe this is not true. So Irving
I disagree with you, and I would love to continue this debate, but I should pass it off to other people having questions because I don't want them to feel like I've taken over.
Okay. So actually, we've got kind of backing it up a little bit. We've got a question from Pluto, who's wondering, what other political stance would you have if you weren't a fascist, and why?
God, I don't know. I'm such a it's a way of life. I just put a video today, fascism as a way of life. It's such a way of life. To me, it's common sense. So I can't even think of anything else I'd be right now. I'm so overwhelmed with this. I'm so passionate about it. It's in my blood. It's in my soul. It's in everything I am. So there is no other way. The only thing I would be outside of this is a complete misanthrope and a nihilist. That's where I would be without this.
Well, what were you before you were a fascist?
Oh, well, typical kind of anarchist mentality, living for self-gratifications. You know, this typical American, I would say.
Did you adopt like ideas more towards like capitalism or socialism or a third position or what? Corporatism? Is there anything that you had in mind?
No, I wasn't even well formed in that sense until I started reading books on that. I was just simply out for myself. I'd work a job to get money to have fun. I mean, that's how I looked at life. I'd look at the political system. Hey, it's what we're born into. I guess this is it, you know, and you'd have to deal with what existed. So I never had any kind of I guess strong economic or political views before I started reading books on history and figuring out different forms before I started caring, essentially. Like I used to not care. Like what would it matter to me what's going on with society as long as, you know, I had my thrills. And when I started to care about that, then I started to get politically orientated.
Okay.
Okay. So kind of getting back into fascism itself. So Naho asks, is the greater good more important than individual freedom? And would you put limits on individual freedom in order to achieve greatness?
Yes, and fuck yes.
Okay. So this kind of leads into a question that Vincente asked earlier, which is, how do the people have any power in a fascist state? I mean, doesn't the fascist state give power to few individuals? And if you're okay with restricting people's individual freedoms, I mean, how can you like is this just like an individualist kind of movement, or is this like just kind of explain that to us, because I'm not understanding that either.
Well, individualism exists. I mean, you can't get rid of that. It's always going to exist, and it's for a good reason. It should exist. I mean, this is where a lot of our art and creativity comes from, is our individual self. So you need to heighten that. I believe when you heighten that, working towards a common goal, the individualism reaches a higher aspect of simply, in itself today, your individualism equates to your personal desires physically, essentially. And when you're contributing something better, your physical desires are in tune with that. I believe, and I think it's also created and shown in history, you contribute much more and you're part of something greater, and it even helps your individualism in that. So it's not a complete curtailment, but when you say, we go back to the transgender issue, should taxpayers pay for this and all this? When you put yourself as the center of the universe, when you go straight Ayn Rand philosophy on me and you say, everything, infinity is created for my desires, I find that as a sick perversion of thought. To me, that's like so disgusting. This infinity we live in, you think revolves around you. It doesn't. We are social creatures. We are bound to each other.
Hey, baby girl.
What happens in the Black community in America affects the white community in America. It affects us all, because we are, whether we like it or not, we're united to each other. And when one of us falls apart, or one section of our society falls apart, it's eventually going to affect us. So since we all are united, since prehistoric times, we were tribes, we had a chief and everything, we had unity, we had to live together and work together. It's the same today. Even though we have a lot more people in different systems, it's the same today. We're intertwined with each other, whether we want to accept this or not. And to put someone's personal desires over the greater good, to me, it's sick. I can't get over that level of egoism is an unfounded egoism. To me, I can't comprehend with it. I don't think you are too, unless you're a complete degenerate piece of shit, which fuck you anyways if you are, but unless you're that, I don't see how being a part of a collective society would really infringe on your individualistic self, so much so that you would be so adverse to it.
Okay. So Min Mexico is asking, or is wondering, what can a young fascist do, and what career would you recommend if someone wanted to start getting involved in politics?
A young fascist can read literature, educate himself, can work out physically, improve his body, and can dig into himself to find out his spirituality, get self-aware, find out who he is, why he's here, get into some beliefs as far as that. Best thing to do, and I hate to recommend this, but is to go to law school. What works in this society is rhetoric. You have to be a good speaker, and you have to be able to convince people of things. And nothing, unless you're a fucking Talmudic rabbi, nothing outside of law school will prepare you to do that. So if your intent is to get into politics, and you're like, well, I got 4 to 6 years to kill before I do that, and I'm going to university, then go to law school.
Okay. Now, Fiore, who is not here again, had a question, but instead we're going to go to Urban District Bograt. It says, firstly, I want to thank you for getting me into Linkola. You're a good lad. Secondly, may I ask your opinion on Scotland, Ireland, Wales in relation to the United Kingdom? Do you think that there should be a union between these countries, or should they be independent?
Well, once again, I'm American, so I'm not going to speak on European issues, but I do like the concept of the European Union. I hate how it's manifested and what it is, but I do like the concept of, I think the countries should remain themselves, their sub races and their subcultures, the dominant majority in those countries. But I do believe we all need to work together. So I do believe unions should be made. And I do like the concept of the EU and NATO and everything else. I just don't like the apparatus and the system and the mentality of current day. But I do think it's more advantageous to us, instead of warring with each other, that we make unity with each other, and we all have kind of similar directions.
Okay. So Killa Blue has a question, and that is, what do you think about the Muslim immigration to Europe?
Well, yeah, it's horrible. What do you mean? It's culture killing, it's demographic killing, it's unnecessary, and a lot of it was created by us here in America, our military and our politics and all of this. So yeah, no, there's nothing good about it. It's not good. The Europeans fought off the Ottoman Empire and the Muslim invasion for so long, and now they're not even fighting. They just accept it, and they put on "Don't Rape Me" bracelets. So yeah, no, it's. I don't think there's anything good with it. I think Muslims, I think Arabs, the Middle East is their land. They should do the best they can to improve their land and get the kind of societies they want in their land. I think when you go to Europe and you start taking apart Europe, you benefit no one. You benefit no one. No one in mankind, no one in humanity is going to benefit wiping out the Germans or the Swedes or anyone else like that. And I think that's eventually what's going to happen in Europe with this Muslim migration, especially left unchecked.
Okay. I mean, don't you think that there's a little bit of a disconnect there? Because it seems like you really care about like individual cultures and people protecting their culture, but when you boil it down to like the level of the individual, you're totally okay with suppressing their freedom of expression, sexually, personally, artistically, even. I mean, where do you where's the cutoff point there? Like, do you just not care about people as individuals? Is it like, is there any limit to how much you suppress a person's individual rights for the collective? Like how far do you take that?
I think the culture defines that. I don't think I define that. I think the culture defines what is right, what is wrong, what we're going to tolerate, what we're not going to tolerate. Now the ethics of tolerating everything is promoted, and that's not a good thing. I think society needs to draw a line. Where do I draw it? I don't know. I view it different. I view I'm very friendly to individualism. I view you're not going to find too many fascists who call themselves fascists that talk about, yeah, gays are fine, transsexuals are fine, whatever. It's like you're not going to find too many people saying that. So I think I'm very open to individualism in people. Just when it becomes subversive to the whole, then we have a problem. That's where we draw the line. So I don't think I'm too adverse to individualism. I
Well,
see the benefits of it.
well, I mean, don't you think that kind of mindset makes individuals a slave to the current dominant culture rather than the creators of it?
No, because if they can add something, say you're born into a world and certain things are going a certain way. If you can say, well, look, we can achieve much more going this way, then you will convince them of that. One of the misnomers of fascism was there's no open debate and criticism. But this is completely wrong. When you look into fascism, even in Nazi Germany, where it was the most totalitarian, you would see people able to disagree with policy and able to bring that argument of policy with people. So I'm not for like, I agree we should argue over policy and which way to go. What I am for is subverting people against a system because of individual wants or degeneracy. And I think most of the pushback to fascism will come for a desire of degeneracy more so than your personal liberty. And I think the people that promote this try to tie in degeneracy with liberty, while the fascist says, no, we don't accept being degenerate as a part of your liberty. So I think that's the cutting line. And when you say what's degenerate, that comes down to the culture and traditions of the nation. The people will decide that. It won't be some magic man at the top of the altar telling you what's right and what's wrong. The culture of the society will already determine where's that line at in society. Fascism just holds the line. We don't hold the line today. We keep pushing it back. Fascism holds that line and says, once you cross this line, you violated what we culturally accepted to be palatable. So I think there's a fine line. I think we're rational enough as creatures, once we remove a lot of this indoctrination, that we can figure out as a society, hey, once you cross this line, you're pretty much going against us as a whole. So we need to squash that out.
Okay. So I think got a couple people that want to talk to you. The first, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you. Go ahead and ask your question. Anglophile, are you there?
Oh yeah. Sorry, the mic cut out for a second. Okay, so yeah, I was curious about birthright citizenship. So that's a thing that continuously gets brought up over and over again. Although, like you said, I mean, the mainstream media, you can't really talk about it, or else you're immediately gonna, be condemned as a white supremacist or something and gotten rid of. But overall, like a lot of paleo conservatives would argue that basically, if you have birthright citizenship, then it incentivizes, mass immigration, because you can come over here, you can have a kid, and then once you've had a kid, they're citizens, and then the kids tug on the heartstrings of policymakers and say, well, since the kids are here and they're citizens, you should give the parents amnesty, and it kind of repeats itself in a vicious cycle. And basically, I mean, that's kind of what happened with the Reagan amnesty. But essentially, Trump campaigned, or one of his campaign promises he talked about was eliminating birthright citizenship. And I would ask you, do you think that birthright citizenship is like a fundamental obstruction to, like a fascist America? Do you think it would be required that we would have to do away with birthright citizenship and replace it with either some sort of like mandatory military service or some sort of community service? Like you'd have to earn your citizenship.
Definitely. That's I misspoke a while ago, years ago, and I called myself a civic nationalist. And I didn't quite understand what the other people calling themselves civic nationalists were calling themselves. And
yeah, you were kind of throwing me off there. I was like, okay, but you would say, birthright citizenship is something that has to be done away with, essentially.
Yes, it has to be, because it's just it's not sustainable. It's not sustainable to culture or anything else. And yeah, it has to be done away with. I believe, I guess a cultural nationalist will be more accurate, I guess. But yeah, you'd have to get
what system would you replace? Like, how would you become a citizen in the ideal fascist society? Like, what would be the requirements for citizenship? And the last question: do you think voting rights should be stratified? Like, if you participate more in society, should you be given like a greater number of like votes? Like, if you're, some person who's like served in the military for 10 years or something, or you're deemed a productive citizen, do you think you should be given more votes than like, some, dropout or something?
Yeah. If we have to have a voting system, then that would be the best way to go, which you're suggesting. I agree. I don't agree with the voting system, period. I don't think we get the best men by whoever's the best at rhetoric. And this is typically who wins in elections. So I don't think the voting system is a accurate way of picking the best people. But if we have to have a voting system, I would hope instead of the ignoramus that knows nothing about politics having an equal vote and two of them having more of a vote than the educated person, I would hope we would make some kind of points for people that we know that are invested in the society, contributed to the society, and actually know something about politics. So yeah, if we have to have a voting system, I would agree with something like that. But I don't believe in the voting system, period. I don't think it's conducive to picking the best people.
So, like, real quick, what would you say we should have then to pick like leaders? How should it be done? Like, because you said you disagree with oligarchies, like with monarchy, because essentially with you disagree with monarchy because of the concentration of power. So how would you say we pick leaders if not through a democratic system and not through more of an inheritance system? How do you go? Would you take a test? How would you pick your leaders?
They should be appointed, I believe, through merit. It's kind of like a job application, essentially. But I think where it gets confused is like the people don't have a voice. I think there needs to be mandatory town halls where the people that are in charge, that are appointed to running a district, have to deal with all the local problems and take the local issues up to their Congress or Parliament or wherever, and they deal with it there. I think it should be more intertwined. I view it may seem like a contradiction. I view it more of a true form of democracy is when you have these constant town halls, and you're already cultivating people that actually care about this shit, as opposed to today. So you have more town halls where people are bringing up issues, and the people appointed have to go through all these town halls, listen to these people, and take that. If not, you can have complaints filed against them. And if if there's enough complaints, there's like, well, look, you're not representing your constituents as well as you say you are, because we got fucking 20,000 people saying you're not listening to them or bringing up the issues they brought up in our local community into Congress. So I think being appointed makes more sense through merit, earning it like a job, like you would a job. You wouldn't democratically elect someone who talks the best to get a job position. So why would you do that with your state? I hate this mentality of like, when it comes to war, when it comes to sports, when it comes to business, we use a certain method, but when it comes to society, we disregard that method. And like, no, we're just all going to listen to the best bullshitter and we're going to vote on him depending on what the media shows us. It's like, I hate this mentality. We know a winning recipe and we see it. It's hierarchy, it's authoritarian, it's top down, it's unified people towards common goals. We use it in business, we use it in sports, we use it in war. Every time you want to achieve something, we use the same method, except when it comes to our society. And to me, it just frustrates me. It's like, I don't get, we see this winning recipe. Why don't we use it? And when you have a bad coach, guess what? You can replace the bad coach. It happens all the time. So to me, that makes more sense than anything else. I think that people have better representation when people are appointed through meritocracy to their positions, and their job is to represent the people. So if they suck at that job, guess what? You're getting replaced for someone who's better at that job.
So you would say there would be some sort of like standardized test or something, or some sort, not a test, but there would be some sort of like state, like, we have like the Department of Energy or like Department of Defense. There'd be some sort of like state appointee system. And because you said like, obviously it can't be voting, and on this like appointee system, this judge of like potential leaders, you would have some sort of like standardized or some sort of equalized list of like things that make you more of a contender, like like you said with business. you know, like what degree, what sort of college you have, what sort of work experience you have, you know, how well you've done. Like you would have to have things like that. Basically, you'd have to have like a college admissions process, but like for politicians, kind of.
Something to that extent, yeah.
And it would be run by the state.
Yes.
Okay. I mean, that's pretty much it. Yeah, thanks for answering my questions. You've been a pretty chill guy.
Thanks for asking them. Once again, people talking shit in the chat. Get on voice already. Come on.
So before
I don't
we
know
get
if
those
you're ready
people
for
talking
that,
shit,
man. There's too much concentrated autism that's going to come at you like full speed, man.
I want it because they're full of shit, and I want to show them they're full of shit, but they're not willing to speak up.
So before we get to the people talking shit in the chat, we have one very nice man who's been wanting to ask you a question, and that is Urban District Bograt again. Let me scroll down to him. Mr. Bograt, you are on. Go for it.
Okay, hello. I just wanted to say I'm a big fan of your channel. But nonetheless, I feel like it's easy to see why women generally prefer feminism as a movement. I don't really feel like they're very welcomed towards nationalist movements, even though like they might naturally sort of align with them a lot more. So do you have any sort of like, advice or incentive as to like women's role in the changing political atmosphere?
Oddly enough, as a fascist, I don't want to take too much of a general theme of what women should be doing. I think we live in an unnatural society when we're pushed unnatural things. So women are taking a lot of unnatural positions to them. I think we need to undo all of this. And once we undo all of this, you as a woman, you'll know. Is the greatest thing I can do is raise a family and raise great children and keep my family together, be the glue that holds my family together? Or you'll know is the best thing I can do is go into NASA and contribute to science. I think women individually will know this. I just think we have a corrupt system right now that encourages women to be men and says, yeah. So I think it's like we have such an unlevel playing field. I think once we get that level playing field that's a little more in tune with nature, most women will know for themselves. Like, I feel comfortable I feel my biggest duty, and I hate how motherhood is disregarded in modern society. I really, really hate that. And I've seen, just a little personal about myself, like I haven't been in the workforce for a couple of years. I've taken the proactive role in being Mr. Mom with my kids, and I'd have it no other way. But like when I take my kids to the park, I see the mothers like just snapping on their children, arguing with their children on the same level. And it's like, I hate that they've been degraded so low that they view this as such a demeaning thing, when in my mind, like motherhood is like one of the most important jobs a society has. And it's like women, mothers, essentially, because of that natural instinct of nurturing, of caring, which can be taken advantage of, unfortunately. That natural instinct serves so much strength to raising the future generation that it's been disregarded in today's society, with both working parents and all that, and the kids being raised by television and school, that it's been viewed such as a bad thing. So ideally, you would want most women to say, no, I don't want to enter the workforce. My workforce is making my family strong, and I think that contributes best to the nation. But at the same time, if you have a talent for mathematics, if you have a talent for biology, then by all means, you should be pursuing that. But I think once we level the playing field, once we get a little more natural about it and less certain propaganda on certain angles, that women will be able to make their own choices, be more free of that, instead of feeling like, oh, I got to work in this factory because, I need to work. It's a part of who I am. It's part of me becoming, essentially a male. So, yeah, I think that's up to you, essentially, in the end. But I just don't think we have the level playing field where most women can make that decision truly based on who they are and what they value in life. I think we're pushed towards, you have to be a male, you have to work in the factory with the male, or you're being, disregarded.
Yeah, definitely. And like most women I talk to, most normie women, like if they did have the choice to be a housewife, they would take that choice. But nonetheless, I want an honest answer. do you feel like women are inferior to men?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I appreciate the honesty.
I'll expand on that. Let me expand on that in a second.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so when I say that, I look at life underneath. You said you watched my videos. Have you watched the masculine virtue videos?
No, sorry, I haven't watched all of your videos.
Okay, well, how dare you? Because that explains exactly where I'm coming from with this sentiment. When I view life under masculine virtues being something that's been, and I say in the video, masculine virtues, they aren't synonymous with man, but they're generally in man. You find these same virtues in women, but in individuals. You don't find them in the general aspect of women. So when I look at the Faustian idea, the will to conquer, the will to explore, the will to expand, it is largely man who has done this. This is why man has been the writer of history. This is why there's been Julius Caesars and all this. It's largely been this masculine drive. Yukio Mishima explained it, manhood as being this essential climb up a mountain, that to be a man meant to be better the next day than you were the day before. It meant to climb a little higher the next day, to continue this climb. This was essentially what was man. This is essentially what was masculine. For those reasons, when I look at the explorers, when I look at the conquerors, when I look at the people that dig deep into the psyche of the mind and nature itself, it is largely masculine, it is largely male. For whatever reason, through nature or whatever else, it has been, men have been more concerned with the great unknown, and women have been more concerned with security generally, right? This is not to say you as an individual. Any individual that masters the will can obtain whatever they desire. So I'll put that preface there. But generally speaking, this has been the theme. And for that reason, that's why I believe I'm an advocate of masculine virtues. That's why I do believe I can say the statement, which will be used against me, right? If I ever run for office. Oh, look, he says women are less than men. It's not less than men, but I value a vision of masculinity more than I do of femininity. And so for that reason, I would look at men as being the forebearers of this, the trailblazers in this way, generally speaking, more so than women. It's not to degrade women. I hate that you put it in that question, who's better, but when you said be honest about it, so I'll be honest with you about it. But I couldn't, like, my wife is as detrimental to my family as I am. And without her, our family would crumble. Without me, my family would crumble. We are gods and goddesses. I love that aspect. We have our own strengths and we feed into them. I hate we're pitted against each other in this day, and I hate the phrasing of your question. But to answer it in the way you phrased it, I have to answer it honestly. And the masculine virtues, I think, are what guide men and women the best, more so than any kind of femininity.
Yeah, I won't disagree with that. Like, you're quite spot on. That's all I really wanted to ask. Thanks.
Okay. Well, thank you.
So Fiore is up again. I'm gonna go ahead and unmute you, Fiore, and you're ready to go.
All right, can I just say one thing before I ask my questions?
Go for it.
I am like really, how do I phrase this? I'm like really, I really like how honest you are. I'm like, pragmatic. I just wanted to say that. It's not really common where people are just like honest and upfront like that. It's actually, it's a very positive trait. I just wanted to say ask my question.
Let me be a little more honest then. Looking at Christian Democrat just makes me want to cringe, but go on. No, but seriously,
that's
yeah,
actually
go
the
on.
topic of my question. I was gonna ask, do you think Christian democracy and a Christian democratic political ideology is a Christian democratic political ideology that advocates for a commitment to social market principles, Christian social values, and qualified interventionism is close to fascism, or is in any way possible a vehicle towards fascism?
No, I don't think, well, I guess you can have an election process under theoretically fascist beliefs, but I don't think it's synonymous with it. I don't think it's conducive to it. Christianity, yes. As far as I believe Christianity, I believe who preaches it. We look at Christianity today, we know it's nothing like Christianity 500 years ago. And what has changed? The texture, the literature hasn't changed in Christianity. It's just the people preaching it, and the times have changed. So the message kind of changed. But I do think the Iron Guard was a good example. The Phalangist in Spain was another good example of how they tied in their religion with their political beliefs. I do think you can have a moral and ethical system behind Christian theology. To me personally, being a person who believes in the separation of church and state, to me it's not advantageous, but I would much rather live in a Christian fascism than in a liberal democracy. So yeah, it's conducive. It can work, right? Not democracy. I don't think it can work, because I think that can play on people's passions too much. And I think the huckster is the person who speaks the best and can tell the most lies and promise the most things will typically win in a democracy or in an election process. So I can't equate that with fascism, but I've seen examples and positive examples. And when I look at like what I personally desire, I don't personally desire a theocracy, but I would much rather live under a moral theocracy than this like hedonism and nihilism of modern capitalist liberalism we live in today, for sure.
Okay. Any follow-ups, Mr. Fiore?
My follow-up will actually be this: what is the process to choose leaders within fascism, if not some kind of voting process?
Well, the first leader makes himself known, right? You'll always follow Napoleon. How did Napoleon become a leader? How did Julius Caesar become the leader? Alexander the Great was born into it, obviously, but it's like usually people, how did Hitler or Mussolini become a leader? Usually someone will proclaim themselves a leader or something, and they'll get people to follow them. So the initial leader is always created through his own merit, being able to convince people he's a leader. After that, I believe personally, the best selection is through a committee of however many people entrusted with the position to appoint the next leader after the first leader. But the first leader is always through merit. You will always follow the first leader. This is my frustration, is I haven't seen a leader worth following my whole life. So it's like, damn, I'm waiting for that to come. Unfortunately, I don't think that'll come. But that's usually how the initial leader makes his stance. You will follow him. If you believe in someone, you will follow him. After that, I believe the appointment, whoever adheres best through meritocracy and best through the culture and ethics and the direction of the nation will be appointed to that position. Maybe the leader helps in that decision, who replaces him and whatnot. But yeah, I think by appointment is probably the best way to go. Much better than general election, I would say, at least.
Okay, thank you. So we've got Potato up next. Go ahead and mute you, and you're ready. Go for it.
Oh, so my first question is about the economic effects of fascism. Okay, so Hitler, when he came to power, he had essentially an economic miracle. Okay, from what happened in Germany. Would you say that this supports fascism? Like, would you use this as an argument? And also, just generally, would fascism increase GDP growth faster than?
Yeah, yes and yes. Yeah, and Hitler's the perfect example of that. Yeah, the Nazi economy. That's why I did the video on it. I got sick of people like undermining and talking shit about it. It's like it wasn't perfect, but damn, it turned a destitute country into a world power in 6 years. I mean, holy shit. It took the whole world to beat that fucking little ass nation. So yeah, I do think it speaks for itself. That's why I keep saying fascism was killed by the sword. It never died on its own. It wasn't communism. It didn't grow old and decrepit and fall apart on its own morals. It had to be killed. But why did it have to be killed? Because more people, when they see their successes, would want to emulate that as well. So no, I truly believe, not only economically, but culturally and ethically, fascism is the best way to go. I truly believe, and whether someone may think I'm naive about this or wrong about this, I truly believe this is our best course as humans. To me, this makes the most common sense. It's not intellectual at all. To me, this makes common sense. Finding a position, a populist position that takes aspects of right and left and makes them work, to me makes more sense. It's just common sense in my mind. So yes, I do believe the financial, not only that, of Italy as well. Italy was doing pretty damn good as well. So not only do you see the financial success, but like the pride of a nation. This esoteric, even though you can't quantitative this into numbers, having simple pride in who you are and the nation you're a part of. We don't have that today. People burn our flags today. I used to be one of those people that would spit on the flag. I was like, that doesn't represent me. But imagine fucking actually loving the nation you're a part of. Like how much motivation that gives you. Like fascism creates this in people. This is missing now in people. And I think this is a large reason why we've been so divided, is because we've lost this touch with like having pride in who we are as a collective. So I think fascism, not only on the economic level, on an esoteric level, touches into this where democracy or communism can't.
Okay.
Okay. You got any follow-up?
To that one, no, but I've got the next question. So this question you've pretty much answered, but I'm going to evolve it, I guess. The people that propose the concepts such as gender constructionism, okay, or other ideologies.
What is that? What is, I don't even know what gender constructionism is. What is that?
Have you ever heard the phrase gender is a social construct?
Oh, yeah, okay.
That's them.
Okay.
Okay. And other LGBT whatever groups. So when it comes to society, okay, you talked a lot about degeneracy, and you said that should be decided by the culture. But the thing is cultures don't evolve if they're restricted and prevented from evolving. So generally what I ask is, what do you feel about these specific positions, okay? And how about the general trend of an evolving culture under fascism?
Well, I don't view gender issues as restricting of that or anything as like restricting the growth of a culture. So I would kind of disagree with that interpretation. But what I would say though—
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean growth. I just meant change.
Okay, yeah. See, like I said, if I personally view it as a neurological makeup, something has gone wrong, and I think science has even proved this. I forget the exact document, but like one of the nuclei were shrunken in homosexual males that were more common with heterosexual females, and they thought this is why. And they were doing these tests in the 70s, and homosexuality got removed from the DSM. From the diagnostic of I guess mental abnormalities, let's call it, through pressure, not through science, right? They got moved from this, but there's scientific evidence that showed that this is why this difference happened. So I don't, it's not like a civil right thing to me. It's a scientific issue to me, but it's not nothing that should be contradicted. But to answer your greater question of what you're saying, the beauty about the fascist ideology is in the parliament, in what exists, in your representatives, in the people, open debate is welcomed as far as which way should we go, how should we go about it. Attacking the system itself is not welcomed, and maybe free speech people would argue with that, but like we'll just tear away at each other till we're dead. We'll all end up victim classes blaming each other like we are today with that kind of mentality. But open debate saying, hey, our desire to go to Mars is taking away from our desire to, to help the Earth. So like that argument could be had in a Congress. So I don't think it would stop. Open debate is welcome. And there's even been in Nazi Germany and fascist Italy, like newspapers even that came from a good place that were arguing against the directions they were going, that were allowed to exist because they came from a good place. It's when you come from that subversive place where they're trying to tear down the government itself, is when fascism restricts it. Outside of that, in the parliament activity, especially in America, you would have open debate for the best way forward. And I think this keeps the door open to changing of society, keeping up with, advancing with time, essentially. I think open debate is most crucial. I don't want to get dogmatic. In fascism, whether people believe it or not, is not dogmatic. It's completely open to debate. It's saying, if you can convince us there's a better way to go, then please convince us of that, because we want to go the better way. We don't just want to go the way that was laid down before us. We want to go the best way. So this is this is what pisses me off. That a lot of people don't understand fascism. They think it's so dogmatic. It's like the least dogmatic philosophy. It's all about improving humans and society. So there's always evolution in that. There's always growth in that. It's just in the context it's done in. So that exists, but there's a level in which it exists. If you're attacking the system itself, then I believe you should be put up against a wall for sure. But if you're within the system and you're arguing about the best way forward, then I believe your voice should definitely be heard.
Okay, but now I've got a continuation. So how you want free debate within say the government structure and people who are quote unquote coming from a good place. Now the question is like in the communists where they only had one party, okay? How can you, and you supported a committee appointment, right? How could you have people who have, say, pretty radically different views on large matters get into positions of power if they're decided by people who have, well, different positions?
Good question. Really good question. I think, once again, this might be idealism. We all know humans are so corruptible. We understand that. And we would like to make an ideal system where humans work for the benefit of the good. You would hope, I would idealistically hope. I'm sorry, I don't have a definite answer to that question. It's a very good question. It's a human question. It's something we humans haven't figured out yet. But you would hope that people, say if you're picked to represent your state of Idaho and you're there, even though you have these views that are different from society, you would hope the people in the government were truly religious about the belief of the society and the rules and the ethics set forward, that they would put someone in there. It's like, oh, this man, he's always countering everyone, but he leads to good conversation and thought. So he's worthwhile in here, you know, even though he's always he's contradicting this and that. You would hope that. I can't give you a definite answer. I wouldn't want to live in a government that wouldn't allow a person like that in there, even though he's worthy of merit. So I would agree with you, but I can't give you a perfect answer, man, because unfortunately it doesn't exist. And I'd just be lying to you if I made up some bullshit. So I understand your concern, but I say that same concern you have exists under everything else. Imagine you running for office telling the truth. You're not getting elected, right? So that's just how it's working. That's the society we live in. You would hope if people live to the cause, if they really believe in third position philosophy, they wouldn't hinder a man like that. They would say, hey, look, he's a natural contrarian, but we need a fucking contrarian to make us think harder about the ways to go. I would hope that would be the mentality. Like I said, it's a little idealistic, but it's the only answer I can give because I don't think there is no true answer to that question you asked me.
Now, I don't want to just like hog the thing, keep asking questions, but I got one more.
Okay, one more.
So you're right in that I agree that there doesn't seem to be a general answer on how to prevent this thing, but that leads to a bigger question of how do you prevent corruption in general in this society? Like what checks and balances do you have that would prevent, say, a cronies or oligarch forming that just appoints their own people perpetually? And I mean, not just ideologically, like they support this position, but I mean, like they support people that will, say, after they leave, allow them to maintain power and continue to get strength. So it's sort of like the political system in China. And overall, just general corruption. How do you prevent, well, them from appointing people who allow them to be corrupt and acquire capital and other things through other means?
Well, we prevent that as people, or we accept that as people. This is what it comes down to in the end. So I believe if we have a society where we're physically molded to be stronger, and like I always say this kind of thing, it's kind of a joke, but it's kind of serious, that there are no fat kids in the Hitler Youth, right? So you have to be physically, you're tuned physically. You're brought up on masculine virtues, honor, courage, all these things, steadfastness, honesty, accepting responsibility for your mistakes. You're brought up with all these kind of mentalities and these metaphysical concepts. And so you're raised under this kind of environment. Now you have a leader and you see, like, well, we're not getting what we expected to get. We're not going the direction we're expecting them going. He's putting his cousins and his sons and all this shit in charge. You would hope, if the council isn't changing that, if they're corrupt as well. So I would imagine, as opposed to today, where 40% of us are obese now, where most of us are too comfortable to actually give a fuck outside of holding a sign in a mass protest, that I would hope people raised on masculine virtues, chiseled from their youth to be physically healthy, that they would be more likely to revolt against such a system than we would today. So I would hope that would be the truest check and balance of a dictator gone wrong, would be the people, because they're raised more in the willingness to sacrifice. They're less materialistic. It's something I kind of respect about the Palestinians. They're so willing to throw their lives away for their cause and their beliefs, even though their beliefs may be like out there and what they believe, but they're so willing to throw it away for that cause. When you have a people raised under what fascist idealism is, you create such a people, which is kind of rare in European peoples, to be that kind of way. But if you have that, they're more willing to keep, even if the council has gone wrong, even if all the people at the top have gone wrong, the people are willing to see it and acknowledge it and fight against it. It's a better check and balance than what we have today. I think what we have today, like I said, we're fat, soft, and weak, and we're comfortable, and we'll bitch about it, but we won't change it. I would imagine the people raised under that kind of mentality would be more willing to change it. I think that's our best. I think the people that are willing to sacrifice are our best check and balance. As the old statement goes, people under democracies deserve the leaders they have. I think that's true with any political form. If you're willing to accept a corrupt leadership, then that's what you deserve. If you're not willing to change it, then hey, that's what you get. So I would hope we'd be more willing to change that if we were raised, if our environment was a little different. Does that kind of get at what you're asking at?
Yeah, but then what if they don't have, do you support then armed citizenry and other things? Because like, if you have, say, Nazi Germany would have like a Gestapo, it seems like that would be pretty difficult.
I completely agree with armed citizens. We went over this a little earlier. Yeah, I agree, especially in America. You need to have not only armed people, I think everyone should be trained on how to use their arms. So for sure, and for sure, you can have a secret police. But how long are the secret police going to go against the full populace? What the Gestapo did was overstated by many people as far as suppressing the masses of people. My video on Nazi economics will go into how when the heads up at the Nazi government, the National Socialist government, when they tried to make laws that the people or economic restrictions or price concern or controls that the people disagreed with, they would revolt against it, and the Nazi government would have to pull back on that. So that's always existed. That's always there. The Gestapo, the whoever, the Navy SEALs, whoever America would have, are not enough to stop the people if the people know something wrong is going on. So unfortunately and realistically, it's on us. If we accept this corrupt bullshit that's going on today. So it's like, A, we kind of deserve it because we accept it. It's like a battered wife. If she keeps making excuses for the husband that beats her, then hey, guess what, bitch? You deserve that. So it's kind of the same mentality. If we accept getting slapped around, then guess what? Unfortunately, nature dictates we deserve that. So I would believe underneath a fascistic raising, a masculine raising, that we wouldn't accept it as much as we do today.
Okay, so I just want to take a minute to just thank you again for agreeing to come on here, because I mean we've gone for over 2.5 hours, and I think it's been really educational for me, but I'm sure for many other people in the chat. So you okay with taking a few more questions?
I am. I'm actually looking forward to some of these people in the comments that are talking shit. Like, this is what I want. I want people that are just calling me a cuck. They're calling me I'm not a racist because I say so. It's like, step up, faggots. Really speak to me face to or voice to voice at least, and call me out on this, because I take personal offense because I'm completely authentic, and I put my pride on that. So to act like I'm like holding back on what I really believe, it's like, well, speak to me in person. Let's make it a little juicy. Let's make it a little spicy right now. Who wants to come in here and call me out on the bullshit outside of talking text, where it's super easy and there's no repercussions for it? I ask for that.
Let's see. I think most of them are already gone. But I did promise Blue Riddler that they'd go next. So Blue Riddler, and then I'll find one of these angry people to, to challenge it. Okay, and Blue Riddler, you are unmuted. Go for it.
Can you hear me?
Yep. I can hear you.
All right, I'm afraid I'm not your opposition, but here's my question. What are your thoughts on Oswald Spengler and Francis Parker Yockey? And do you subscribe to the Spenglerian ideal of cyclical culture? If yes, I have a follow-up question.
He's replying in text. Oh Lord.
No, I don't believe in cyclical nature, because I think will manifests. I actually went into this in one of my drunken rants. I was saying I hate the concept of, because Evola and Guillon speaks about this a lot, and Guillon, however the hell you say his name, will speak on this a lot about the cyclical nature of male. And Spengler, I love Spengler. I really do love Spengler. And I do see why he comes from where he comes from, but I think will manifests more than cyclical nature. I think we can change the cycle through the manifesto of our will. So sure, the cycle may exist, but we determine when that cycle changed. So it's kind of a yes and no question, but I think will manifests more than cyclical nature, because more in Evola's, not so much in Spengler, but more in Evola's belief was that we're just doomed to these cycles, and we have no, like, you have to ride the tiger, essentially, is what Evola said. Is like, hey, as the classical man in modernity, you just need to ride the tiger, bro. And I believe we need to be the tiger and change the course of history. And I think this is what changes the cycle. Our will take us to a golden age. So although Spengler was 100% right on the decline of Europe and the decline of man, and we are living, like, he's proven right by what we're living today, but we can change that through our manifest will, and that can change. We are not doomed to a cyclical, calendar. We can manifest any change. We can create a golden age simply through our will manifest, and that's always my belief is we control what age we're in. It's just, can we do it? Are we willing to step up and do it? Can we win this throne of power, essentially?
Do you agree with Spengler and Yockey when they say that imperialism is a sign of death, of a culture of death?
Well, I think history agrees with them, right? I mean, can you show me an example of history that doesn't agree with that?
No, I can't. But I only asked because earlier you brought up Manifest Destiny, and according to my understanding, it was imperialistic. No.
There's always a sense of imperialism in it, but American Manifest Destiny, I guess it's over this continent. It was imperialistic over the indigenous Indians here, I guess. But outside of that, we're suffering repercussions to this day of our weakness of giving them land and all this shit and rights and all this. But yeah, no, I don't think so. I don't think, I think when I would agree, like British imperialism, I think Roman imperialism was a better method. British imperialism allowed too much of indigenous character, and that would always lead to their downfall. If you're going to partake in imperialism, you have to liquidate what you're imperializing. Unfortunately, that's the reality of it. So I don't think we need to imperialize fellow countries. I think we need to imperialize space. I think that's like the next step. But we haven't seen any example, even in Roman Empire died under imperialism. We haven't seen any example of imperialism actually working to benefit the host country. Unless I'm mistaken, could you offer like another imperialist country or society that it actually benefited them in the long run?
No, I agree with you entirely. I just wanted to bring up the manifest destiny thing along with Spengler and the imperialism being the final stage of a culture.
Yeah,
So I just found it interesting that you brought up manifest destiny. That was all.
yeah, no, I use it in the specifically Americana extent when I speak about manifest destiny, and simply for this continent. I understand why you would say that. It's kind of a dualistic term, but yeah, I kind of mean it for simply for Americans, for America, for our, I guess our root culture, the drive in us, and I think the drive generally in Europeans, this Faustian ideal. Created or meant or I guess put into literature by Goethe of this desire to always want to know more, conquer more, learn more, expand more, and achieve more. And I think this is in our soul for most of us, and it's something we must continue. And I think personally, I think space is the next frontier as far as that goes. But it's wholly nationalistic when I speak about manifest destiny. It's not the Roman or the British method, essentially.
So you mean manifest destiny in more of a philosophical way rather than colloquial?
Yes, 100%. Yep.
All right. Thanks for taking my question. Big fan.
Thank you. Thanks for watching, brother. Thanks for tuning in. Yes.
So Mr. Rastin has been waiting very patiently to ask this question.
Yes.
Oh, actually, Naho wants to go.
No, I don't.
Oh, no.
I don't want to talk to this dude.
Talk to this dude, honey. Come on.
Oh, no. Right.
I'm so sorry.
Talk to this fascist, honey. Speak on up. Tell me what's so wrong. Come on, honey. No, tell me. Tell me with your superior feministic mentality. Tell me why I'm so wrong, baby.
Bash the fash.
Bash the fash, honey. Do it. Do it for everyone in America. Let's see.
Okay, actually, I think Diogenes is going to step up to the plate. Diogenes, you are unmuted. Go.
Yeah, thank you, Doobie. So my question actually had to deal with this. I was coming across a quote in the Republic. I think you're familiar. I believe you're familiar with Plato. He might have been, I think, maybe perhaps an early proto-fascist, but
he actually was. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a problem here with your ideals, and that's Plato believed that a tyrant, essentially, what fascists promote as the most important part of thought, right? A unifying figure that brings everybody together. Plato believed that such a figure naturally occurs from democracy. Not only that, but if I have
hold on, let's stop there. Before you go, not only that, let's address one thing at a time. Yes, you're right. It does. A leader is always chosen by the people, so it's very democratic in that sense. Okay.
No, not democratically elected.
No. Supported by the people. It doesn't need Democrat doesn't need to be votes cast. It needs to be people supporting. So typically when you have these avatars, like I spoke about this earlier, your original avatars and leaders are always supported by the people. There's nothing more democratic than that, than having the people support a leader. So that aspect does exist in the dictatorship, in the leader, in the general, etc. That's always there. You do have that democratic element to it, that the people support a leader. You have to have that. You can't achieve anything without that. So that does exist there. There is a democratic element to choosing, to supporting that leader. So that does exist. It doesn't need to be by votes. It needs to be by support, which I think is deeper than votes, because votes are easy.
So then my question becomes, if it is natural from what I think the ultimate democracy, really Plato actually talks about anarchy, right? He leads into this question on anarchy in the Republic. Page 95, if you guys are wanting to look for it, introductions in the specific copy that I have. So if you think people will naturally follow a hierarchy, do you not think that under anarchy, the perfect leader completely based on merit will arise from the ashes and lead humanity as the dark messiah towards a golden age? That's my question.
Well, that's why anarchy is a fallacy, because that's what will always happen. There'll never be a society where you have anarchy. there will always be a man of power that takes power, that consolidates power, and that enforces that power on everyone else. Anarchy is complete fallacy, never existed. Even as primitives, we couldn't go with anarchy because there's always a chief of the tribe. There's always a tribe that's willing to kill the other tribe. So yeah, it's a complete fallacy. You will always have a man of power, no matter what system you set up, whether it's mercantile, whether it's based on certain ethics or whatnot. You always have these men of power that step up and that consolidate power. That is human nature.
Yeah, I think you didn't actually answer the question I was really asking for. Because
okay, we'll ask you specifically.
Specifically, I was talking about out of an anarchic state does not a perfect leader arise? That was my question. Out of a state of anarchy does not the perfect leader arise? Does not the perfect tyrant take control?
I would say theoretically, yes, that can happen, but that same thing could happen under any other system as well. But yes, you're right. Under anarchy, a good leader could arise because he can convince the people to follow him, etc. But that can exist under whatever, like constitutional democracy we have now or anything else. That same leader can make those same grounds gained, and your anarchy would end essentially, right? If once you start supporting that leader. So yes, you are right. It is conducive to that. Genghis Khan, right, is a good example of that. How anarchy is subverted by a leader. So it's yes, that is true. But I think I don't know. Are you advocating anarchism in a sense? I don't understand like the base of the question.
Okay. So I'll challenge the idea that anarchy's never existed. When you say that I am a proponent of anarchism. I'll answer that question, but I do not think this idea of a chief always leading the tribe, so as to speak, was the common way that people organized. That's anthropologically false, actually. If we look at the ancient cities of Jericho, Koyuk, even of Göbekli Tepe, they don't actually follow the masculine doctrine of a single chief ruling a tribe. In fact, early civilizations, for the most part, transitioned seamlessly between different seasonal types, where they, in one season, acted in a more hierarchical fashion, and another season acted without a hierarchical fashion. So they switched quite frequently around 10,000 BC and more as we progressed, quote unquote, progressed, and built cities. And even cities themselves, early civilization, was actually less hierarchical than before. So this general idea that you push, that the chief or the hierarchy always led society, and even to the extent of today, is false. It doesn't fit the actual anthropological evidence.
It actually does. Any society worth a damn had a hierarchical system. What you're talking about is A, speculation, B,
I have evidence.
Okay, but built off civilizations that didn't accomplish a goddamn thing. No one's talking about any of these things you're talking about as far as contributing to the human society. So even if these societies were constructed of however they are run, I guess, individuals going their own way, no laws, no authorities, everyone's making their own way, which I don't think is true anyways. But even if that's what you're saying, that doesn't equate to what we've grown as a human civilization. We've grown through Egypt, Greece, Rome. These were the civilizations that gave us all of our creation, all of our architecture, all of our philosophies have come from these societies that had a natural hierarchical system instead of individuals going their own way. With that said, I would love, like, if we couldn't have fascism, I would love to have anarchy, no laws at all. And like, I would love to live in that society. I think I'd be at my strength in that society, living like a Genghis Khan. And this is essentially what anarchy would bring about you. If you have no society full of laws, culture, and restrictions, you make the biker gangs the warlords of any little civilization. So I don't think anything, when you talk about no centralized authority, no hierarchy, I don't think we think we've seen anything that's manifested in the human reality that's been beneficial and advantageous to humans that has come out of anarchy. We've seen brutality come out of anarchy. And like, if we want to enter that world, I will enter it for sure. But it's not a world I would desire. I would desire a world of law and order instead of chaos. And this is what anarchy brings us. It's not beneficial to humans. It takes us right to chaos. And would you like disagree with that? Would you think that no, it brings law and order and cultivation and the higher elements of society? Because I haven't seen that throughout history.
Yeah, actually, I would argue it totally does. If we look at just, and let me get, if I can get the PDF, I'll give it to you later, but I have the PDF, I have the documents, I even have a book for you, recommendation by
please do, yeah,
anthropologist, What Makes Civilization. It's a great book. There's also a history of early states by, if I can remember, I forgot who it was, but I have it by my bedside. Anyways, yes, I think that such states would actually, when I say state, I mean a period in time in which people interact, would be better, much better than the current states that we have, meaning that the hierarchical nature that you speak of. Not only is, if we're going to talk about a degenerating society, we've degenerated from societies that have been complex and fluid to ones that have been stagnant and held to these rigid notions of morality and such, and that we've kind of started to destroy ourselves, the environment, and domesticate ourselves. What you speak of when you talk about civilization, education, forcing people into these rigid structures is not progress, but cannibalization of the environment and of what's just naturally around us. If there's anything that's natural to human beings, it's to be free, okay? Not to be restricted.
What is free? What is free?
Freedom is something that's not restricted by anything but its nature. Okay.
Yeah, fuck that. Exactly, fuck that. We can't exist as a society when, and my freedom is against that, right? We can't exist like that. No,
your freedom includes the restriction of your freedom includes the restriction of peoples to function in a rigid way towards this, what you call an ultimate goal of humanity, right?
Exactly.
You want to progress into this ultimate goal.
Unadulterated anarchy, right?
I
so
do.
you exactly, you can't
and I
have
think
a
that would
conducive
often
society.
be better. I do think that would be better for everybody overall. I honestly do. I'm the antithesis of you, if you could think about it.
No, I think you're heavily mistaken. I don't think history supports you at all. But
okay.
But no, look, and you say the same with me, right? You want to recommend me books?
I do.
Please give me those books and all that, because I'm so willing to read those books and get into it with you even deeper on that, to see where you're coming from. But as far as I've seen it, with human realities and human nature, it is not. We need laws and order. We need civilization. We need culture. All these things help us manifest towards our greater destinies. I understand you're saying unadulterated freedom. I tell you, unadulterated freedom leads to hedonism and brutality. It's just a reality of the thing. You won't agree with that, I guess, but
it's authority that leads to what you're talking about. Authority is what allows people to exploit, and I mean, priests wouldn't get such access to so many little boys without anybody knowing if there wasn't so much authority and trust put into them. This great amount of trust that you put in these leaders allows them to exploit you. It's if you had freedom, you wouldn't trust people to the extent that you would give them this.
Please,
this
people aren't susceptible to good rhetoric. Bullshit. Give me a break.
I didn't say they aren't. In fact, they are. That's why we've ended in this, what I would say is more of a degenerate civilization than anything. And if anything, I'm the one who believes we've degenerated, not you. All you think is that we've not gone into the road of progressing as a civilization, right? But I think that the civilization we've built for thousands of years is horrifying. It's a destruction of nature and the environment.
Right,
And
right quick, like if I could
you
hang on, Diogenes, hang on,
sure.
hang on. I've been trying to ask this question for about 5 minutes.
Sorry.
When you said you would love to slaughter these limp wrists in an anarchical society, do you mean that literally, or do you mean that figuratively? Like you'd love to debate them?
No, I mean getting on my motorcycle and putting a fucking gun in my hand and going around. That's exactly what I mean. Genghis fucking Khan.
That's what I thought. I was pretty sure.
James Mason.
Good luck with that. Man.
Good luck
Wait,
with that.
what?
That's what anarchy brings. What did you understand? Might makes right. That's human history.
Yeah. Well, you know, exactly. But that whole idea, your solution is to put all the might into one hand and then let that ruin.
No,
everything.
that's not the solution. That's reality of human history. I'm sorry. Might makes
okay.
right. Everything is made by who holds might. Even in your anarchist society, someone will gain power. Like you said, it's the true form of anarchy. People will follow a leader. Someone will become a leader and they will inflict their might on the world. This isn't my opinion. I wish it wasn't, an opinion. This is the reality of human nature. It's always has been.
Well,
it
your
always will be.
belief in human nature,
period.
right? You believe.
Period.
That's the thing. You believe.
That's the
that
reality of it.
naturally, right? Yeah. Okay. You believe. Okay. That human society tends toward a hierarchy. Now, I don't believe that. That's why I don't think anarchy will end towards basically an absolute monarchy, right? And people, no matter how powerful, have never ruled over all human beings, right? So it doesn't seem to be natural that humans desire this hierarchy. In fact, because we degenerated from what you call the natural rule of power, right, where usually one man controls more of society.
Hold on real fast. Hey, Big Nasty, get your lame ass on voice chat and talk shit. Stop sending me private messages, talking bullshit. If you're half-ass a man, get on voice chat and talk to me. I'm sorry. Go on about anarchy.
Okay, that the exact fact that majority throughout history, rulers have constantly had to depend and then slowly lose power as you see more and more people gain power, demand more freedoms from their rulers. That's what we're generally seeing. As we see that trend continue, you have to ask yourself, was this natural at all? And then with the evidence provided, it isn't. So the only conclusion can be that your desired end or goals of everybody ruled by this ultimate Leviathan is a failure from the start and a misconception of history.
I don't see how you would say that. All of history would support exactly what I'm saying. Might always made right. Every law of every people have always been followed by the people that are willing to enforce that law, no matter what anarchical society you had. The people that swung the most swords made what was culturally acceptable. This is the reality of life. I wish what you were saying was semi-true, but that's simply not the reality of the world. You can bring up, anthropologists dug up this bone that said these people didn't have a leader. But the reality is, when we look at Rome, when we look at Greece, when we look at Egypt, when we look at America, when we look at Europe, when we look at every other civilization that has impacted the world, there's always been a hierarchical system. There always will be. It is natural in man. It is not only natural in man, it was natural in everything produced from nature. So I would say you're completely too idealistic in your beliefs. I think if we entered the world you wanted to enter, it would work out very bad for you in the end, because you're an intelligent person that is probably too intelligent for your own damn self good, that you've thought yourself into thinking you can exist amongst yourself when you can't. We are a collective people. We are intertwined with each other. If you open the restraints on man, guess what? Like I said, is Genghis Khan time. We revert to fucking 5,000 years ago. We go right back to that. Power dominates. So it's I understand where you're coming from. I want you to send me those books. I want to read them, and I will. And I promise you, after I do read them, we will speak in private about this again.
Sure.
Because I'm not like I keep saying, I'm not dogmatic in my thoughts. I want to be challenged. I want to learn more. So send me that. Just private message me. Send me that, and we can get into this more. But I view your view on life very flawed and very idealistic, and
Yeah,
doesn't
so
adhere to
I
nature.
think about the same. I mean, right, we're the antithesis. I'm an anarchist and you're a fascist.
Right.
If there was a political spectrum, which there is, we'd literally be on opposite sides of the scale. I'm
We
actually
kinda are,
in the
yeah.
center of the scale. We're literally on the opposite sides, actually. So it
Yeah,
couldn't be more.
but I'm interested in seeing what intellectualism you have behind your beliefs. I really am. I'm not fucking bullshitting you with that. I do want to dig into that. I don't think you're right. I don't think you'll be right after I read that, but I'll know how to speak to you, at least in a verbiage we'll both understand at least.
Okay. So thank you, Diogenes. Now, Hootie actually has a couple questions for you.
Oh, where's Big Nasty at? Get on here, you lame ass, limp wristed, sorry ass person. Personal messaging me, talking shit. I don't got the time to block you, or I would. But why don't you show your half-assed man and get on here and talk some of the crazy shit you're talking in this private message?
Keep it
I
civil
don't know.
now,
I
darling.
don't know, Big Nasty. You want to step up?
He don't want to
Not even
step
very
up.
good.
He don't want to step up. Fascists like to fight, guys. I guess you don't know that.
Let's go, Big
I'm
Nasty. You're
unmuted.
unmuted.
Nasty. See what he has to say.
He's unmuted. Let's go.
Let's go.
Gonna step
Oh,
up.
oh, he's so boy. You're not so nasty, Big Nasty, are you?
So we're gonna go to Hootie instead. Hootie has some questions for you. Hootie, go for it.
Hey, what's up? I didn't catch the entire thing, just the tail end. I'm just sort of trying to see. I assume you're American.
Yeah.
So, like, how would you convert the American system currently? The way we vote and all this and that. Like, how do we get from where we are to where we have your system of fascism, where nobody has a vote? Like, how do you convince everybody to just give up their vote?
I think it's going to come through populism. I think with all fascist doctrines, you say, how do people give up their vote? They voluntarily give it up. As I guess contradicting as that would sound. And I think we need to do the same thing. I think you can't hide it. You can't try to sugarcoat it. You have to tell people what it is. I think the American masses are getting to a point where they understand, they're starting to understand that this voting system simply doesn't work, especially when you rig the game like the game's been rigged, when you allow illegal immigrants to come in and vote, when you pander to these people and do this, and you set the whole system against people. More and more people I speak to, like, I never come out and say, I'm a fascist and here's what fascists believe. I always speak on fascist principles to people, and most people I speak with will agree with it, and they're willing to give up these certain tenets of what they view as their constitutional rights and all this stuff, because they understand that this is more idealistic than realistic. And so I think we can honestly do this with people with the initial stage. It just needs to be convincing to people this is the better way forward. I think once people understand that, I do think, this is my personal belief. I could be wrong. I'm not saying I'm right on all this shit. I'm just saying I do think Americans are starting to understand there's a lot of flaws in this system, and we need to start figuring out what these flaws are and fixing them. And I think this is one of them. So I do think running on it and promoting this and preaching this, and then giving the aspect of you're still going to have people representing you, but it's not going to be the lawyer or the person who's best at rhetoric anymore. It's going to be the person we feel that represents you the best, not who promises you the most and doesn't follow through with this. So I do think, and like I said, I understand it could be a bit idealistic, it could be a bit naive, but I do think we can promote this message and have Americans support that and understand this is the better way forward, and even the more democratic way forward.
I mean, well, the thing is, I mean, there's definitely going to be, there's always been fascism in America. I mean, there's always going to be people who do agree with what you're saying. But what I mean is, like, how do you get the people, the majority, who are just going to we're all right, yeah, we're done. We're all going to be fascist. Like, it sounds like, do you want to get up to like 100% of everybody being fascist? Because you're not going to get to a point where everybody's just a fascist and they're just going to just give up, because they're absolutely opposed to everything that you're talking about.
So I think most people, like today, I think a large part of people will like, oh, I don't completely agree with where we're going, but hey, it pays my bills. I get my television, I got my sofa, and I'm going to put up with it, right? I'm just going to work within the system and maintain. I think the majority are going to be like that. I think you're going to have a minority that's completely against it. I do believe you either put them in work camps, you expel them, but like you see people like Lenin, they were expelled over and over again, and they still were able to create revolution in Russia. So it's like maybe you need to look at who you're expelling and put them up. And I also think you need to put them against the wall. I know this is I guess a hardline stance with people. I don't know, like execution is viewed differently today. But I do view if you have a subversive element to society, you can't allow that to exist in your society. And I don't allow it to exist, and I'll never pretend I'll allow it to exist. Like I said, you're either going into work camps to you're readjusted and willing to be a part of the game. You either shut the fuck up and do your job and say, hey, it could be worse, but hey, this isn't so bad, and live amongst it, even though you don't completely agree with the way, like most people do today. Or you completely be subversive against the system, you get put up against the wall and liquidated, essentially, because that's the way you're dealt with. So these are the three options as far as I'm with. And it's like, we can't allow subversion. We can allow argument, we can allow debate, but we can't allow subversion, because we'll just end up right where we're at today. A bunch of different victim classes picking away at each other, trying to get the bigger piece of the pie, which benefits none of us.
So whenever you run, that's going to be your platform, is firing squads and
no. No, unfortunately, that would be brought
you're
up
gonna hide
against me.
that. You're gonna.
No, I'm not gonna hide that. I'm gonna have to speak about that, right? I'm gonna have to say, here's my three options: work
people who
camps,
disagree with you get the sword.
expulsions, put up against the wall. That not who disagrees with me, but who disagrees after the fascist government has power. Because it's not about.
No, I'm talking about
Yes.
before. I'm talking
Yeah.
about before. After is a fantasy. It's your fantasy.
Exactly.
I'm talking about how
Exactly.
you get to your fantasy.
No, you can't. Why would I talk about putting people up against the wall when I don't have power? It makes no sense.
That's what I'm asking you. How do you get to your fantasy? How do you get there?
By speaking on populist politics, by speaking on the positions of third position philosophy that feed into the right and to the left, that attract them all. By getting people to believe into that way of life and attracting them to that. I do believe.
What if they don't believe? What if they don't believe?
Then they don't believe. We lose. We live this
I've heard
democratic
you.
hell we're in. Then we lose. I mean, what do you mean? What if they don't believe? Then we lose. It's simple as that.
But we've won already. We've already beat fascism in the anarchist sort of model or whatever. Sorry, I'm getting heated. In the whole, everybody's against everybody. Fascism has been tried, and fascism has already been destroyed. It didn't survive. So it's not as if fascism is some model for perpetual whatever. Like, let's just do a fascist thing, and this is going to survive forever, because everybody knows that fascism has been stamped out. So it's not a model of success.
No. Well, I brought this up earlier.
Fortunately,
You said
history doesn't work like that.
Exactly. You came in late, you said, but like I said, fascism died by the sword. Fascism never fell on its own face like communism or democratic capitalism has. So
the guy on his motorcycle went and killed the fascists already. That's my point.
Okay, yeah. So they're long dead and gone. Guess what? The spirit's not dead. Here we are again, speaking the same old message we spoke in 1922, right? Doing the same old thing. So if that's not palatable to the people, like when I run for a local position, or if another fascistic minded person runs for a local position, if that's not palatable to the people, what will happen? We won't get no traction. We won't get no support. We'll fucking dwindle away. That's exactly what will happen. But my point is, if I see this as the right way, and I see this as a way that can save this country, and eventually I'm going to have, and since no one else is speaking up, eventually I'm going to have to. So if I fall flat on my face and the American society doesn't accept that, that's it. That's it. You know, at least I can justify to my children, like, listen, this is what a man does. He fights for what he believes in. And this is what you do. You put forward. So even in my worst case scenario where I'm demonified, made a joke of, laughed at, called an idiot, ridiculed, can't work again, even in my worst case scenario, I passed on to my children, fuck them. Fight for what you believe in, no matter what. So even in the worst case scenario, it works out best as far as I'm concerned. But you're right. What if people don't accept that? Then they don't accept that. then it's wrong. Then I was wrong in thinking it was possible, right? So yeah, that's exactly what happens. The people will always decide, and I can say, oh, they're blinded by the media, but if I can't convince them outside of that media, that's my own failure. It always comes back to me or the individual promoting the ideal. So yeah, you're right. What if Americans say, fuck you, we killed fascism, we're happy where we're at? Hey, guess what? I guess I'm in the minority. I'm not happy where we're at. They are. So I guess I'm wrong as far as that goes. So it always comes down to that. So, but we have to try, right? And win or fail. That's it. And that's the only thing I'm preaching is we have to try. And if the American people support it, we'll win. If they don't support it, we'll fail. But at least we'll know we gave our effort to try to put the message out there. And whether it's rejected or accepted is upon our ability to promote it and their ability to accept it. So it kind of ends up like that. It's in that realm. So yeah, if it fails, it fails. It is what it is. But we shouldn't just accept what is because we're born into it, I don't think. And we should always try to push forward for something we feel is better. And that's what I feel I'm doing. I don't feel I'm making anything worse of what I'm preaching. So I guess that's where my mentality is. Can you see where I'm coming from? I win or lose, whatever, as long as I'm in the fight.
I mean, yeah, you do you. Go for it. But like I'm just trying to figure out how you get to where you want to get. And
I think Trump opened the door. You don't think Trump opened the door for that at all? I mean,
yeah, I'll agree with that.
Okay, but yeah, and let's really look at this. Because before,
yeah, but look at this. Look at what's going to happen in 2018. You got a surge. You got a blue wave.
I hope they do. God damn it! I hope Oprah Winfrey is our president in 2020.
What I
mean really
is,
do.
Yeah, I mean, I probably just repeated myself, but your ideology does not exist in a vacuum. And it sounds like the world that you want is fucking disgusting, but not that you care what I think.
Why is it? No, I do care. Fuck you. I do care what you think. Why do you think?
Okay, so yeah, I disagree with you. You're gonna put me on a firing line? Go for it.
Why would I put you on a firing line?
You've already told me because I disagree with you.
Because you like child porn? What the fuck do you like that you need to go on a firing line?
Because I disagree with your model. This is America. We have one man, one vote. That shit. You're talking about converting America and the Constitution, all that stuff. So you're just saying, yeah, we're done with that. And we're going to do this fascism thing now.
So would you argue that system has been working?
Yeah, it seems fun.
It seems fun? Fuck you! My children are born in this shit. The fuck you mean it seems fun?
I said fine. Sorry, I got an accent. It's fun. You know what you can do? You voted for Trump and you got him. And then now you're seeing the consequences of that. So vote again, and then vote again, and then vote again. That's what you do in this fucking country, son.
How is that an argument for this country? Keep voting for the lesser pieces of shit, and that's our country, bro. Come on. How has this worked? No, I want to hear him break this. I want to hear the thought process behind this. I don't want to seem like I'm attacking the guy or getting mad. I just want to hear the thought process behind this. Because speaking to me, you may be educated on politics, but two dummies have more votes than you have. So how the fuck is that a conducive policy to electing better people?
Yeah, that's how we ended up with Trump. Yeah, you're right, because dummies vote too. So yeah, when I take the hits and I get a Trump in there, I don't sit here and cry about it. I'm not going to talk about putting people in the firing squad. We need to just wipe out votes. It's a game, man. You play the democratic game. You keep voting, and you see where it goes. You're just sort of complaining about the way. Well, no. Complaining about the way it is.
Yeah, I'm saying there needs to be a different way. It's not simply complaining. I'm saying this is a wrong fucking way. And I think you prove my argument. You say we just see where it goes. I'm not comfortable with that mentality. I don't like to say, hey, these politicians who run on these same organizations, we're going to vote for every 4 years, and we're going to keep going down this. There's just going to be stewards that you can replace like a glove on a hand every 4 years. I don't. It hasn't worked for us. It's actually decaying this country. We see it culturally, demographically. We see everything that's been happening in this country is through the democratic process. I just can't see how you're so willing to accept. Do you have children? Like, are you raising children into the future right now as an individual?
Irrelevant. Here's the thing, though.
So relevant.
No, irrelevant.
You're not invested in the future.
Look, I got one last question. No, I actually am. I've got one last question because I know people are getting bored with me, but it's basically, if your argument is that you don't like the way voting goes because of the way it goes back and forth, well then if you're asking to take away the vote and then just let people in power conserve their own power, and then they will be in power from here to the next one, to the next one, and then everybody else will be on the outside. And what do they do when those people in power start doing things that they don't agree with? Like, just somebody else just rise up and just we'll wait 50 years until somebody comes along and destroys sort of the monarchy, I guess is what it is.
So the same example you're giving exists in today's society, but just to answer, I already answered this, but just to repeat it, I would hope, but like you're saying, we have no proof anyone can be, everyone can be uncorruptible. There's no proof of that. Humanity has not shown us that even exists, right? So I agree with that. But like I said earlier, I would imagine, and we have that today under the system you enjoy. We definitely have that. And we also have today a fat, 40% obese, addicted to porn, sedated in life, very comfortable people that the biggest extent the majority of people are willing to take is hold up a sign and march together, essentially. You would hope, I would hope, I grant this is idealistically, you would hope that a people from birth, chiseled to be hard, chiseled to respect masculine virtues, chiseled to embrace honor, sacrifice, courage, duty, you would hope a mass like that would be more willing to get rid of corruption than a mass that we have today. So that would be my only argument for that. I truly believe people deserve the government they have. I don't like this government, but you know what? I deserve it because I can't change it. So that's the reality of it. And that is the sad reality of all human history. So even under the system you adore so much, where it's like, fuck it, I didn't get my way this 4 years, but maybe next 4 years I will. Even under that system, there's a lot of people that don't like this. Most people don't. You look at every poll, most people are sick of this right-left pendulum, but they support it. They put up with it. This is reality. I would hope a people more serious in life, with greater aspirations in life, raised from birth like that, would spot corruption easier and extinguish it. Okay, so I don't think the democratic method, I don't think anything has shown us that the voting method is conducive to picking the best people to be in charge. I don't think anything in our American history has shown us that, outside of like the first couple presidents. I don't think anything in any parliamentary democracy in Europe has shown us that. I don't see the advantageous aspect of this political doctrine manifest into reality. I see the opposite of it. I see every system that has adopted this democratic view to be played and used against them. And I would ask you, you so disagree with me, to please check out my channel. Please check out like the video on propaganda and videos like this that explain how people have learned to tap into the psyche, the desires of people, and to twist that in order to get votes. And I'd say once you see that how proficient they are at that, you'll see that this democratic process is a lie to us. You, even though I disagree with you, I at least know you're on this Discord and you're concerned about politics. That already puts you 10 steps above the average person out there. But guess what? Those average people out there who follow Kim Kardashian or whatever and make a vote, 2 of them will trump you in anything you're saying. And you're like, oh yeah, I saw that with Trump. So you wanted Hillary? I mean, what the fuck were your choices? So I don't see how this system works. It just hasn't worked. It feeds onto the base level of the masses. It feeds on the low-hanging fruit of the people. And it's all about who has the best rhetoric, who makes the most promises. And I don't think that's conducive to a higher culture, higher civilization. So that's my argument against it. I do believe fascism is that. So but in the end, you're right. It's what we're willing to accept as a people will be our law. So I hope that understands it. And I hope you check out some of those videos on my channel and then come to me with some questions about critiques about that. Because I do think you're misguided, but I do appreciate you're politically aware And I wouldn't want to put you up against a wall. Don't take it so personal. But I do believe you're the type of person that would agree with fascism when you come to truly understand it and see the benefits of it, because you are politically aware, because you take the time to think about these things. I do think you would look into this and see for yourself it's a lot more pragmatic than a democracy is. I would hope that, at least.
Okay. So first off, I just want to remind everybody that his channel link is in announcements. I encourage you all to subscribe and watch his videos. Secondly, Killer Blue here has been very patient in waiting for this answer. She or he were supposed to go the past few questions. So I'm going to go ahead and unmute you, Mr. or Mrs. Killer Blue. There you go.
Thank
Ask your
you.
question. You're welcome.
Thank you, Culture Talk, for being here. First of most, say I have in my family fascist during the World War II. My grandfather was actually fascist nation, was this state of Croatia.
Hold on, Killer Blue, can you speak up a little bit? You're breaking up.
Yeah. So I have actually my family fascist, like only my grandfather, and he used to go to this fascist school, and he actually met this fascist leader Ante Pavlic. But you opened my eyes more for what this fascism means. Yeah, but my question is, I don't live in Croatia. I live in Sweden, and we have these many nationalities here in Sweden, like Kurdish people, we have Arabic people, and they are very proud of heritage. But what I don't see is I don't see West people like Swedish, Norwegian people being proud of heritage. Like they just talk shit about their religion, they talk shit about their heritage, they mention colonialism. And why do you think we have this mentality in the West? And what do you think we can do to stop it?
I think most of this is to do with education and pop culture. There was a time, like we had Columbus Day growing up. Now you don't have Columbus Day. There was a time where even in Swedish history, I would imagine that they would build up the heroes of their past. Nowadays, they don't. I think this has affected. My children go to public school. So my daughter, I have a daughter 10 years old and a son 8 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And what they're being taught in school, it drops my jaw sometimes with what they're learning. And thankfully, like I said, I'm a proactive parent, so I see what they're learning, and then we look at the full picture. When they tell them Nelson Mandela was a god, like, hey, let's look at the real life of Nelson Mandela. Let's dig into who he was, what he believed, what he was about, and all this. So we do stuff like that. But I see, and I would imagine this is the same for Sweden, I see this repetitive message of white guilt and white privilege being taught in the public schools. So when you tear people down psychologically, tell them everything great you achieved is at the oppression of other people. You tear away at who they are and tear away at their pride, tear away at their desire to self-identify with who they are. And I think this is the same all throughout Europe. It's the same. In Germany, after the World War, they had 10 years of what they call the denazification program. And they had to go in there and warp the minds of Germans to hate Nazism, to hate everything it stood for, and to believe in something completely different. I think on a lesser level, this has been going on in all the Western public schools. I think most of these teachers are unconscious to this because they believe it themselves, and they promote this ideology. So you will see in European people that they don't, and even in America, you'll see it with the youth growing up. They won't take pride in their culture and their heritage because it's been so demeaned in front of them. And because this happens, it's hard. And then other races built up at the same time. Oh, look at these great people. They lasted over all this white evil oppression. Oh, how great were they? And Martin Luther King and Nelson Mandela and all this stuff. Like my kids can tell you all about Nelson Mandela and Martin Luther King. They couldn't tell you the first 4 presidents of this country, simply through public school education, which is crazy to me. I was talking to my daughter today, reading this book by Schiff about the critiques on parliamentary democracy. And I was like, do you know what parliamentary democracy is? She didn't even know that. Like, how are you in the 5th grade and not even aware what the hell the system we live under is? And but like I said, they can tell you all about Nelson Mandela, Martin Luther King, and all this. It's through indoctrination that this pride has disappeared. The Arab people, they don't have this yet, but as they go into Europe, and they'll be the victim class for a while, but eventually they'll be blanded out like everyone else. Most, from the stats I've seen, most Arabic Muslims that go into European countries, first, second generation after that, become completely, I don't want to say westernized, but cosmopolitanized, essentially. So this affects everyone. And I think the European people are getting it right now because they are the host countries that are supposed to adopt all of these people. So you have to put this level of guilt upon them, saying any ethnic realization or pride is evil, and you have to accept the qualities of the other races, but none of the qualities of yourself. I think this is consciously and subconsciously promoted through pop culture and the education system. This is why you'll see that in Sweden. This is why Croatia, you tell me, but I would hope it was better in Croatia and a lot of Slavic countries. I would hope it's still, at least there's more of attachment to the root. Am I wrong there in thinking that?
You have correct. It's attached to the root. You can go into a restaurant or bank, you will see the Croatian flag, you will see a cross. Like nobody gives a shit. Like if anybody's offended by the cross, people will tell them go fuck yourself. And like, nah, people don't give a shit, and they are proud. But what I'm seeing is what European Union is doing is telling them what to do, like taking in more Muslims. So what I'm really afraid of is that the country will become like Sweden in the future, and I don't want it. Like I really want it to become like be Croatian.
No, you're right, though. It will become like
Yeah.
Sweden. This is the problem. I have a couple Polish friends I speak to online, and they're like, we're 97% Polish, but we're heading that way. And like, that is the truth. Cosmopolitanism and globalism is affecting us all. They don't care about us. They want to detach us from the root. So we define ourselves by the materials we buy. And this is the end game. This is what they're going to do. They're going to, everything Croatian about you, they want to destroy. They want to make it McDonald's. They want to make it pornography. They want to make it fast food. This is what they want to do. And this is what they are doing unchallenged right now, because the left is not challenging them at all.
Yeah. But Poland is like holding out. They are telling European Union like, no, we won't take in, but Croatia did, like, so they are going this other direction.
Yeah, that's too bad, because Croatian people, from everything I've known and being a big fan of Krokop, everything I've known is they've been a steadfast people. Even during World War II, they actually out-Nazi'd the Nazis, right? So, I mean, they were a very steadfast people. So it's sad to hear that even there that it's starting to head that way.
Oh yes. They took a blow like Nazis during the World War II. Like they were like many of them were massacred or like fled to South America, but people don't talk about now what happened.
Actually, I think Lex has a question.
Yeah.
It's kind of tied to I think the central or what you seem to be kind of dancing around, Killer Blue. So I'm gonna go ahead and unmute Lex.
Yeah.
Lex, go for it.
Hi.
Hi.
Hello.
Yeah. So I basically agree with you with pretty much everything, like the indoctrination and like making us hate ourselves and stuff like that. But I'm wondering, and I hope we haven't already passed on that, but what do you think about like voluntary ethno-state, where like you take a place like Vermont, it's like 95% white. I know they're all libtard, but like just for the, so you take that place and all the people who want the ethno-state go there and start massively voting for like the ethno-state. And basically we buy all the house and shit, and then we just don't sell any house to any people who are non-white, you know? And if that's successful, which I believe it will, and I think we all believe a white ethno-state with Christian value is going to be successful, you just start to buy more and more land around to make the ethno-state grow. and so will be a way to go there peacefully.
So they've in white nationalism they've had this. Have you heard of the Northwest migration movement?
Not really. And in the United States?
Yeah. So that shows you how effective it's been. They've had this ideology for shit like 20 years now. Harold Covington was one of the head people of this. And what he proposed was exactly what you're saying, but for the Northwest instead of like Vermont. And it hasn't panned out. Why it doesn't pan out is when I was a white nationalist in 2004 and 5 and 6, active in Las Vegas here, the guy who was head of our National Vanguard unit, Michael O'Sullivan, had made, and I say his name because he was all throughout media and all that shit. So it's nothing that's surprising.
Not doxing.
But yeah, not doxing. He was out there. He got slammed by national media, everything. Like he went through some shit, but he was a legit millionaire and through real estate. So I always respected this dude because he put his money into it more so than anyone else. But he tried to make land out in Utah, buy a bunch of land and do the same kind of thing. And he learned that he learned through experience that a lot of the white nationalists were like the Jews and blacks they complained about. They were stingy and they didn't want to work. So it was the same kind of thing. So yeah, oh no, it definitely happened. He bought a bunch of land and it fell through because he couldn't get anyone to work it and do everything else. So anyways, you had the Northwest migration movement, same thing. It is failed. It was been going on for like 15, 20, 30 years actually. And it hasn't created anything because A, there's too small amount of people doing it. But B, whenever you have a demographic like that, they open up Section 8 housing and they look at, and there's news articles on this. This is a conspiracy theory. There's Fox News shit that'll tell you this, read to you by black talking heads on top of that. So you'll see that for yourself, where they specifically target neighborhoods, areas that are predominantly white to put Section 8 housing to import blacks into there. So they will never allow an ethnic identity to form. Now, if like California succeeds or after the first state succeeds, I'm willing to listen to talks of balkanization. But until the first state is legally allowed to succeed from the nation, I won't even consider the thought of balkanization because it's to me, it's just too much of a fantasy until we see the first state succeed. I don't think that's possible. That's what the Civil War was about. So I don't think we're going to allow anyone else to do that. So I don't think that would happen. Even if that organically happened, even if you got 20,000 white people to say, let's all move to Vermont and vote in our way of life and we'll live in this little circle. First, that circle wouldn't be unmolested. Like we're talking earlier with Eastern Europe. It won't be unmolested long enough. But on top of that, they specifically look at areas that are homogeneous white, not even black. They don't try to put white people in black neighborhoods, right?
White people just don't go there. I mean, like the moment a neighborhood start to become too much colored, white people just get the fuck out, and you don't really get to like. There's no incentive to bring them back into those places. They're just like fuck that, and also they notice pretty fast that colored people doesn't really like white very much, if we can say that.
Yeah, white flight exists, and now we're seeing like a reverse of that. You're getting the hipsters going back into the cities, buying up property, and kind of what they call gentrifying it. But so yeah, white flight exists, but you can't fly far enough to where it doesn't affect you. And I'll give this example. So I went to Havre Grace in Maryland. I had a half sister there that I didn't learn about till I was 15. And my father was telling me, oh, you'll love this place. It's just white trash heaven and all this shit. So I went there and I'd never seen, and I'm born in Michigan and I've seen Detroit and been throughout Detroit. And I'd never seen as much race mixing as I did in that county, in that area. So it's like and so in his time, last time he was there in the 70s and 80s, it was white trash heaven. But now it become this place where all the blacks from Baltimore came out to the outward counties, started selling heroin, getting people addicted, and started breeding with all the girls there, and it changed the whole demographic of the area. So even if you're able to have that white flight, you can't run from the problem. It's like your personal problem. If you have a personal problem, you're like, I'm going to move a state and go somewhere else. That personal problem is in your head. It's always going to be there. It's the same with this. We can't run from this problem. We can't have white flight from this problem. It is real. It's something we need to address. So something like the Vermont case, outside of pure like legal balkanization, that can't exist because they will always subvert it and they will always tear it down. And they've been doing that. And they target neighborhoods that are mainly white to put in these Section 8 housing areas, to put them in that school district, to quote unquote intermingle them. So this is a conceded effort. So we can't organically, and even if we could organically move to a place, it would only last for a generation or two. It's not a long-term solution. So that would be my argument against that.
And when they did it, the guy, the millionaire or billionaire, whatever, like the rich guy who bought land and stuff, was he going there with a socialist ideology, or were they more like libertarian, capitalist and shit?
Oh, not even like that. What he wanted to do, he bought, I forget how many acres it was, but he bought a shitload of acres, and he's like, I'm going to create this place where we can all build houses upon and do this and set the piping up and all this. So he had tried to get in touch with the local white nationalists to help him start. He bought all this acreage, and he tried to, in Utah, and he tried to get people to go out there and work. Essentially, what he's going to do is have them build houses and be a part of building the houses so they can build their own community there. And he couldn't get, and like, I might dismiss it as people, just, being lazy or not dedicated enough, but people have their own jobs and all this stuff and their own lives. So whatever got in the way of it. People wouldn't come out and do that. He had to end up selling all the property and all of that stuff. And he ended up, honestly, because he made his money in real estate, and he was running halfway houses. And once again, I say this shit because it's all out there. That the FBI leaned on him and said, we're going to take away your halfway houses if you're part of this movement. So he had to legitimately bow out of the whole thing he believed in because of local FBI pressure on him. So he had to step away from that. So it was a mixture of people not being as dedicated, and something I saw with white nationalists. They always say they're racist first, but they don't live like that. Like, they live like foods first. They live like their sofas first. It's like their actions say different than what their words say. And that's what kind of woke me up. Like, this is not a movement that's going to go anywhere, because they're very hypocritical in a lot of these, essential things. So yeah, he kind of figured that out. He didn't even set up a political, it wasn't even about a political thing. It was simply about getting white people to live together and have a community. And he even had a hard time doing that. And me seeing that just made me realize, like, yeah. And then me watching Harold Covington, who was, he has his own issues. I don't promote this guy's name for any reason, but he was one of the people accredited with the Northwest migration movement. And that even fell flat on its face because not enough people are willing to do it. And then even if people are, they can easily pop up Section 8 housing in your area, create an apartment complex, and bus in, 2,000, 3,000 blacks in there, and it changes the whole demographics of your school district alone. I see that all the time in the city I live in. So it's
okay. What about at that point you start shooting the niggers?
No, see, that's the thing. I understand where the frustration comes from. I understand why you would say that. I really.
I was almost legitimate. It's like you try to do your thing in your corner, and then if after that they try to go fuck it up, then it's like self-defense to start their like.
Well, the government's against you. This is what you got to know. The law is against you. So I would say ethically, you're right in what you're saying. I would say it is justified when you're so attacked, when you try so hard to say, look, we just want our own survival, leave us the fuck alone. And when you try so hard, I understand exactly where you come. Trust me, I really do. But that is not the legal reality. The people in America aren't built for that. B, white police officers, white National Guard people will suppress you in doing that. A white judge will send you to life in jail for doing that. It just is not where the country is at. This is why I promote populism. If I thought what you were saying was right, I would advocate, hey, let's be more fucking, violent to these people. But that's not a reality of the future. We're not going to get anywhere with that. It's just going to be chaos, and we're not going to end up at the winning end of that, unfortunately. So I understand that frustration. I really, really do. Because look, it's not unjustified frustration. It's really not. And people argue that it is, and they'll call you racist for saying so, but it is not unjustified frustration with what's going on. I'm just saying we need to take a more realistic and pragmatic path. And I think I tell this to all white nationalists. I think we can have our cake and eat it too. If you think like America's going to be multiracial and that's the end of you, I feel sorry for you, because I think we can be multiracial, we can survive, and we can have greater ideals at the same time. I think it's all who controls the education and the media is what molds what the people become. And I think if we have that power, we can change the whole direction of this country. I think it's a very important tool. But I understand where you're coming from. I understand the frustration, but it's wasted. It's wasted. Too many people died in prison. Too many people have lived their whole life in prison for doing shit like that when they didn't need to. And it's unfortunate because there's so many good quality people who loved their culture and their race and wasted their life going down this road. It's not for us. There is a victory through populism, I believe. There is a best case scenario through populism. And that's why I preach what I preach. We need to go down that road, because what you're talking about is just, I understand. And it's hard to say if it's justified. That'll be used against me, but I live it. I know it. I see it. So I understand where you're coming from, but that is just not a realistic way to have any kind of general victory. If you get where I'm coming from.
So I mean, you seem to be like writing off the alt-right right now. Is that accurate? Like you think that what they're doing will come to nothing?
Yeah, so the alt-right, I think they've already proven that. I think when they went from implicitly white to exclusively white, they fell on their face. I thought they had a chance to be a new voice in the political system. I thought when they cucked out to white nationalism and to Daily Stormer and to Renegade and all this, that they really fucked themselves. And I think people will come out of the alt-right who are serious, and they will be the future. So I don't think the alt-right was a waste. I think there's a lot of good quality people in the alt-right, and I think they're going to get beyond the Pepe memes. They're going to get beyond the living dual lives, one online saying nasty shit to people, and then one offline being respectable to everyone. I think the serious people will step out of that and be the vanguard of the new political way forward. But I think generally, I think we've seen it with all the figureheads of the alt-right, because most of the figureheads have been like insult comics and 20-year-old girls. And we've seen them all kind of get called out. And something I've caught shit from the alt-right for years now is calling them out on their character. The Chris Cantwells and the Enochs and this Eli guy who lied about everything. Like all these people, like I'd call them out on their character and I'd catch so much shit. But to me, character meant so much. These people exposed they weren't of good character. And they were deceitful, lying, and hyping up for the cameras and all this stuff. So I think as their figureheads keep falling on their face, the more serious people will transition to different aspects of life. I met so many people from the alt-right that said, hey, you helped me get onto fascism. And the more and more people I meet like that, are the more and more I realize that there's good quality coming out of this alt-right. Maybe, I don't know if it's the majority of the alt-right or not, but there's definitely quality coming out of it. So the alt-right, they had their peak during Trump, I believe. I don't think they'll ever reach that again, but I do think good is going to come out of the alt-right. I think the fat is going to be cut. The seriously politically minded people that want to have a better future in America will come out of the memeing and the trolling and the shit posting and all this stuff and get more seriously politically minded.
Okay, so I mean, we've been going for almost 4 hours now. So I think it'd be best if we cut it for the AMA. I can't emphasize like how much we appreciate you coming on and kind of going through and being open with all their questions, being honest with a lot of really tough questions that you got in. That was amazing. So again, you guys should really check out his YouTube channel. You'll find the links in the description, in the announcements page, and also we're going to be posting the AMA, the full AMA recorded version, in the AMA channel pretty soon. Culture Thug, you're more than welcome to stick around. We're going to move everyone down to general, to the main like politics chat, and you're more than welcome to stick around to talk to people, to debate with people. You know, all these people who are really pissed off at you that didn't want to step up. I mean, maybe they'll step up there. You know, So yeah, again, thanks again. We really, really liked having you here.
I'll be there.
Oh, Culture Thug, I absolutely would love to have a conversation with you. I've been waiting for a while.
You got any final statements to make, Mr. Thug?
Yeah, I will stay around. I need to step away for a minute to get some drinks and all that, but I will stay around. No, thank you for having me. Yes, I just want, whether you agree with me or not, I just want you to know that I am coming from a place of passion in the heart. And so I will take the tough questions and I will acknowledge things that I can't answer and all of that. And that's the main thing. And I think this is important for all of us, is integrity. Is just be who you are, believe and say what you believe. I think this matters. Whether you agree with me or not, I would hope you would respect that I will present myself as who I am and what my morals and my ethics are, and I'll put them out there, and I won't try to swindle you or lie to you or tell you what you want to hear. And I would just hope the same courtesy from everyone else. And I think if we have more people like that, we'll be in a lot better situation. So that's where I'm coming from.
Great. Thanks again. Again, we really appreciate it. And like I said, we'd love to have you down in the other channel. So mods, move everyone out. And yeah, we're gonna move on.